Number 10. Loki. While these two never fully end up together, Loki does consider that Storm might make a great queen to stand by his side as he rules Asgard. He tricks her into joining his guard by giving her Stormcaster and restoring her powers, making her the new goddess of thunder. That's one way to woo a lady. Make her the goddess of thunder. She'll never be able to resist. In other words, he's making her into someone who can rival his brother Thor. Storm almost fully joins Loki, but ultimately rejects him after discovering that something is amiss and that she's probably been manipulated. In the end, she joins her fellow X-Men to take him down. Storm really doesn't like being manipulated, but then again, who does? However, I would still love to see a world where these two consensually end up together. Is it weird that I think they make a cute couple? Minus the trickery, of course. No tricks. No. Number 9. Archon. In Volume 1 of Uncanny X-Men Annual, issue number 5, Storm finds herself offered a queendom, as she so often is, when she crosses paths with Archon the Magnificent, the Empyrean of the Warlords, a ruler. For those who hardcore ship Thor and Storm together, this also might be a relationship that you can get behind. The two fall for one another while fighting side by side, but decide to call it quits and go their separate ways because of their own individual obligations. For Archon to his kingdom and his people, and for Storm to the X-Men and her teammates. Never meant to be, I guess. Number 8. Doctor Doom. I don't know why I put Doctor Doom above Archon actually, but whatever, that's what I did. When Doctor Doom and Arcade kidnap some X-Men in order to force them to visit Murder World, Arcade's twisted amusement park, Doctor Doom decides to use the opportunity to have a dinner date with Storm. Very sneaky Doctor Doom. The crazy thing is that sparks seem to be flying between the two. I mean, Doctor Doom is pretty smooth and powerful, and he is the well-loved leader of an entire nation, Latveria, so I kinda get it. And he's confident as heck, which seems to be a thing that Storm is often attracted to. However, this romance quickly comes to an end after Doom makes it known that he is also willing to kill Aurora, inciting her wrath after he encases her in chrome to create basically a living Storm statue and spare her the ravages of age. Too cruel. Number 7. Raven. Okay, so the whole of the comic book fandom would really love for these two to be a thing, despite the fact that nothing major has really ever happened between the two. Well, except for that time that Raven got Starfire pregnant. What? You didn't know about that? I mean, in a sense. When evil Raven crashed Corey and Dick's wedding, she implants a seed of Trigon within Starfire that ends up being the part of Raven that was good. This is all part of a plan to have her own evil side destroyed, which ends up working. But the whole scene in the New Titans issue 100 is pretty kinky looking between the two ladies. Beyond that, there is Starfire and Raven's Earth 1 counterparts who end the second issue of Teen Titans Earth 1 holding hands and looking pretty cozy. I hardcore ship Earth 1, Starfire and Raven. They're so cute together. Number 6. Jason Todd. I know, shocking. Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, there's like a lot happening here for Starfire. She likes her Robins. During the run of Red Hood in the Outlaws Volume 1, Starfire got a revamp and her sex appeal was multiplied by about 10. This presented a more sexually confident Starfire who apparently had a close relationship with Jason Todd that went far beyond even physical intimacy. When Roy Harper asks about if Jason is afraid of Starfire finding out about his close connection with her ex, Dick Grayson, he responds that Tamarins see humans as an experience, not as real companions. This later is revealed to not be true, but it's just something that Starfire wants her partners to think, not wanting them to know how emotionally connected she truly is to them. In fact, Jason and Starfire attempted to start a relationship, but ended up realizing they were just better as friends. All of this is better explained in issue 6 of the series, if you want to check that out. You should probably do, it's pretty cute. I'm gonna talk about how controversial that is too later. Ooh, controversy. To number 5, Moreland. 2014's Spider-Woman Volume 2 Issue 2 saw Jessica come face to face with a doppelganger of hers on Loom World. And it was a doppelganger who fancies the villain Moreland. Ugh. Enter a fun tale of mistaken identity. Jessica has to endure Moreland's affections, all while literally thinking, I quote, "Oh, you've gotta be f***ing kidding me." Oh. Long story short, this doppelganger who went by the name of Miss Drew was a servant of the Inheritors after her world was conquered, and once they were defeated on Loom World, 616 Jessica was like, yo, you should totally become the leader of Loom World and make it a better place. Which she did. And at number 4, Iron Man. This number is from the Marvel Animated Universe, specifically from the 1994 Iron Man animated TV series that ran until 1996. Now in this series we see Julia Carpenter as Spider-Woman, a member of the ForceWorks superhero team and the Vice President of Research and Development at Stark Enterprises.
Oh, and she also hooks up with Tony. She has a big old crush on him. They had a bit of a slow burn of a relationship, eventually admitting their feelings and kissing after the Forceworks team helped Tony defeat and kill the Mandarin. But there was quite some turbulence prior to that. At one point, she was married to a life model decoy of Tony, who only married her in order to cover its true identity. But hey, if your relationship survives that chaotic of a start, I mean, that's not too shabby. It only goes up from there, right? Up next, number 3, a different kind of iron. We have Iron Fist. Back to Canon 616 now. Okay, so Jessica Drew and Danny Rand, aka Iron Fist, once bumped nasties when they were a part of the New Avengers team. After some very serious flirting and a victory over the villain Hatemonger, the two found themselves in bed together post-battle. In a story called Modern Love, the two of them beat down on Hatemonger and then hook up, with Jessica teasing Danny about whether or not he's dating Misty Knight. After they both admit that they are very single, Danny asks Jessica what she's doing tomorrow night. It's a fling they eventually decide to end, but one that we doubt either of them regretted. Up next, number 2, Hawkeye. Jessica Drew and Clint Barton were a thing once upon a time. Now you might remember this iconic cover for Avengers Volume 4 issue 17 that featured the two of them embracing during the Fear Itself storyline. Now after Jessica joined up with the Avengers, the two got really flirty, with Jessica even using her spider pheromones on him, which he called her out on. While some fans thought their relationship was really charming, others thought it was Brian Michael Bendis screwing around and having his allegedly favorite character Hawkeye hook up with a woman he thought would make for a hot pairing. And overall, it didn't really make any sense. Considering it's Bendis, no surprise. Their relationship is also one that took a drastic turn in Hawkeye's solo series when their relationship grew toxic and evolved into domestic abuse. In Hawkeye issue 9, he reveals that he's been cheating on her, and she goes to strike him out of rage, but he grabs her wrist and states that he gets that she is mad, but that she is not allowed to do that anymore. It's quite a powerful moment. And finally, in at number 1, we're looking at a completely different Spider-Woman from a completely different Earth, Spider-Gwen and Miles Morales. Alright, so when it comes to the most well-known Spider-Woman pairing, it's gotta be Spider-Gwen and Miles Morales, aka the Ultimate Universe Spider-Man. So, these two come from 2 different Earths. As we said, Miles is from the 1610 Ultimate Universe, whereas Spider-Gwen, who is actually called Spider-Woman, Spider-Gwen's her nickname, is from Earth 65. Now she would first appear in Edge of Spider-Verse issue 2, becoming one of the most beloved characters to come out of the Spider-Verse story event. Then in 2016, Spider-Gwen found herself in a crossover storyline with Miles called Sitting in a Tree, where the two became romantically involved. The premise of this crossover was that Miles' father had gone missing during a mission for S.H.I.E.L.D., and Maria Hill sent him to Earth 65 in order to find his dad. This leads to Miles working with the Spider-in-Residence on that Earth, Gwen Stacy, with the two of them falling for each other, despite Miles eventually having to return to his own Earth. Ah, dimensionally crossed lovers.
In at number 10, Rogue. This falls into the realm of flirtation, which is why it's number 10, and you'll understand why in a second, although some of you are probably already cringing. When Rogue first joined the X-Men and before they knew the truth about their parentage, well, these two would flirt. What's the truth? These two are half siblings. So it's a good thing it never went any further than that. We don't need any Luke and Leia shenanigans happening in the comics. Cause fun fact, in between A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back, there were comics published where those two were in a relationship. Why? Because people didn't know. It was a surprise. Now those comics are really awkward to read. You know what else is awkward? Nightcrawler telling Rogue that he would give her a kiss if he could after a fight in the danger room. What are you gonna do? Live and learn. Number 9, Wolverine. Now this falls into the realm of fanon or shipping. So I can feel the pitchforks being sharpened, you're getting ready. And I am unfazed. There are many different types of ways to enjoy fandom. There are layers. And you know what we're not here on Top 10 Nerd? The Fun Police. So in canon, Wolverine and Nightcrawler are very close friends, good friends. And so that is translated into certain fans shipping them, and even drawing their own fan comics. These are the two getting together, going on dates, the usual. And I'm talking like comics, not just single panel fan arts. And they look pretty credible. One I had to pause because it looked like Cowboy Wolverine, and that was a thing canonically that he was with Hercules in an alternate universe, so it took a minute. I was like, maybe, but then I was like, oh, it's a fan comic. It probably won't happen in canon, which is fine. That's exactly what fanon is for. That and ruffling feathers, apparently. Ruffle, ruffle. Number 8, Nocturne. Now Nocturne is the alternate universe result of a Nightcrawler hookup. She is featured prominently for a time in the Exiles comic, the first run, not the second run. That comic featured alternate universe characters traveling the multiverse and correcting wrongs. This was within the timeline, or at least that's how it seemed at the start. She had been featured before briefly in other canonical comics. She was the child of Nightcrawler and the Scarlet Witch. Her name was Talia. And how did they get together? Shh, just accept it. If you want to ponder potential chemistry, you'll need to go on to our next number. Number 7, the Scarlet Witch from X-Men Evolution. The series X-Men Evolution aired from 2000 to 2003 and had 52 episodes. It focused more on a teenage roster of X-Men, and for some was their first introduction to a whole host of characters who they'd never heard of before, including Nightcrawler and Shadowcat. Well, in this series, there was some crush action between Kurt and Wanda, Wanda being the Scarlet Witch. She even gave him a kiss on the cheek. These were the good old days where Wanda and Pietro were still Magneto's kids before that retcon because of horizontal tie-in marketing. These two were a cute concept, but for a lot of the fans of the show, they were pulling for Kurt and Kitty, Kitty Pryde being Shadowcat. Those two are super close friends in comic canon, because you're not breaking up that Kitty and Colossus train, not unless it's for dramatic tension. Number 6, Storm. Why hello, amazing X-Men number 3. Along with many other issues actually. Storm is involved with a few relationships with her fellow X-Men that may make you go, huh? But there has been chemistry between Nightcrawler and Storm for some time depending upon the writer and the era. So sometimes depending upon who's handling it, gets pushed to the surface. It centers largely upon their otherness and their ability to, well, just be themselves together, and the fact that Nightcrawler is a huge flirt, and some people are just more susceptible to that than others. This one pops up sporadically and is a lot more of a will they won't they kind of thing. This is because both characters have larger pairings that they're involved in. You're more likely to see Storm with Wolverine than Nightcrawler, to be honest.
Number 5, Killer Croc and Enchantress. The Suicide Squad is like the place at DC Comics where weird supervillain power couples are born, and these two are no exception. For Killer Croc and Enchantress, they very much found a connection via the fact that they both feel like monsters in their own bodies. Killer Croc's monstrous nature and outward appearance being the part of himself that he struggles with the most, whereas June Moon's connection to the Enchantress, that monster sort of within her, making her feel about the same. Initially, we thought June, despite bonding with Croc, might be in trouble during power outages and mind-altering shenanigans at Belle Reve. Both June and Croc got out of their cells, and it seemed, despite saying that he really didn't want to, the Croc was ready to eat June. However, it turned out the supposed bite was just a love bite, and the two ended up in a steamy moment of passion instead. Number 4, Thanos and Hela. I mean, it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Hela is like the Norse embodiment of death and is also the ruler of hell, so these two seem to be kind of a match made in heaven. Or I guess a match made in hell? Especially as Thanos is generally shown to be in love with death herself. Hela could easily itch that scratch for him. She's basically another form of death. Not sure what is really in it for Hela though. I guess power is a pretty good motivator, right? If you want to be in a villain relationship, you're probably both like, I like power, you got power, I got power. Let's hook up. In this instance, Hela turned to Thanos for help initially and had to prove herself to him in order to win his favor. When Thanos was killed, Hela was pretty much leading the charge when it came to resurrecting Thanos and bringing him back to life. While in the end, this didn't really work out and both of them disappeared into a black hole, it seems as though Hela didn't actually need to be so worried to begin with. As it turns out, Thanos can kind of be resurrected like other Eternals. Thanos later would appear in Eternals after being retrieved and patched back up. But I won't spoil that if you haven't read that series yet. Also, by the way, we're talking about the newest Eternals comic, which you should read because it's great. Hela, on the other hand, has also since returned, being trapped in the black hole for a while before she finally escaped. Since their return, the two have seemingly not gotten back together. Number 3, Orca and Killer Croc. They're both monsters, I guess, or they both feel like monsters, but otherwise these two seem like a pretty unlikely couple. The reason why you might not know about these two is that they're actually together in the alternate universe that belongs to Injustice. Here, they don't just have a one-night stand or simply are kinda romantic with one another, they get full-on married in this universe and also conceive a child together. And surprisingly enough, although it is a bit of an odd ship, these two were actually well received and have a pretty solid fan base amongst Injustice readers. Number 2, Enchantress and Keep. This romance only lasted a few issues, and I'm not sure we ever even found out what became of Keep. I don't know what Keep's up to now, or if they still exist. What we do know is that he was a monster created by the Enchantress to join her in the fight against Thor, and also maybe to be her lover? Because Keep is her creation and therefore also kind of like her son. It's really weird that he also ends up becoming her lover, and it seems like she may have also designed him for this purpose. It was a strange time. But we don't have to think too hard about it now, at least, because as I said, we haven't seen Keep and Enchantress together for quite a while. Number 1, Darkseid and Granny Goodness. series. Although to be clear, this wasn't any kind of romantic hookup, so if you were hoping for that to happen between these two, no. More a hookup that was used as leverage for power. Granny Goodness in fact was coerced into a physical relationship with Darkseid in order to maintain her status and win more of Darkseid's favor. Don't worry though, this isn't a thing in the main continuity if you're worried about it. It's just a thing in the limited series that exists outside of the main continuity, known simply as Female Furies from 2019. That series examines a potential world where female Furies are more stereotyped and discriminated against because they are women, despite them being capable warriors who have, proven their mettle in battle. Fortunately, this is not the vibe on Apocalypse that we get in the main continuity. Darkseid might be evil, but he doesn't appear to be sexist, so there's that.
In at number 10, Hellcat. Hellcat, aka Patsy Walker, hooked up with the son of Satan once upon a time. Damien Hellstrom and Patsy hit it off as soon as he joined the Defenders, and the two fell in love. Damon was into Patsy because she made him feel loved just by being herself, and helped him become more of, I quote, a son of man than a son of Satan. Whoa. And what did Patsy get out of this? Well, she thought he was super hot. Just, oh damn, look at that Satan symbol on his chest. That's what Patsy was probably thinking. This got even weirder when Satan decided he would try to convince the hero that she was his daughter in Defenders issue 111 from 1982. Incestual stuff. Now, despite that strange blip, Patsy and Damon actually got married in Defenders issue 125, which caused Damon to lose his dark soul and become human, which incidentally also killed him. This led to Patsy attempting to save him in Hellstrom, Son of Satan, issue 12, retrieving his dark soul and making Damon a demon again. And it gets weird for them yet again, because after seeing Damon's true form, Patsy couldn't deal and she killed herself. She'd return eventually, as all comic book characters do, except for Uncle Ben. And in Marvel Divas issue 1-4, Damon reappears to Patsy after she's published a tell-all book about her life, and offers to heal her friend Firestar's cancer in exchange for Patsy's soul. And really, it's all just a narcissistic ruse to Damon, who is just pissed off that he was barely mentioned in Patsy's book. So, yeah. Narcissism goes hand in hand with demonic sex. In at number 9, Buffy. Vampires are considered pretty damn demonic in the Buffyverse, and Buffy, the Vampire Slayer, has hooked up with not just one, but two vampires, having complicated romantic relationships with Angelus, aka Angel, and Spike over the course of 7 seasons of the TV series, which now continues the story in its comic books. Buffy began a relationship with Angel in the first season of the show, which would implode in the second season when his soul was removed and he reverted back to his homicidal sadistic ways. Being the big bad of that season, the two of them split up and Angel ran off to LA to star in his very own television spin-off, while the two were still kind of always each other's OTP, or as far as Sarah Michelle Gellar is concerned, and also myself. Spike, who was initially supposed to be a one-off villain, ended up sticking around for later seasons of Buffy, and the two began a romance. Spike was tormented by the fact that he had fallen in unrequited love with the Slayer, and after Buffy died and was brought back to life and suffered through a very traumatic season 6, the two would eventually kiss. But it was a pretty toxic relationship, and Spike once sexually assaulted the Slayer, so no bueno. In the end, he sacrificed himself for the greater good, finding himself on Angel's TV show after Buffy's series ended. Plus, her pal Xander was also in a long-term relationship with a demon named Anya, so the whole series just has a whole lot of intermingling when it comes to the supernatural and who gets you off. Willow's a witch. It's really just a metaphor for being gay. And at number 8, Deadpool and 2 people actually for this one, Shikla and Satana. So we have our first double offender here on our list. Yes, there are more. Deadpool hasn't hooked up with just one demon, but 2. Let's start off with another child of Satan's, the creatively named Satana, who Deadpool saved from the results of a high-stakes poker game with 5 geeky dudes. It turns out these geeky dudes are actually some bigwigs in the demonic world. Specifically, they are Dormammu, Lucifer, Mephisto, and 2 other guys, who wanted to marry the succubus daughter of Satan in order to become the heir to hell. Now, Satana lost her soul in said poker game, having to be married to the demon who won, until Deadpool stepped in and married her first. In exchange, she endowed him with powers that let him defeat these demons, causing them to retreat. Satana immediately broke it off with the Merc with a Mouth though, keeping half of his soul as part of their divorce. She wasn't the only demon that he's married though. Deadpool had an on and off again relationship with the demon Shikla, who he had been paid to go and fetch after her father had put her in stasis as a means of keeping her safe from Dracula. They got married, but after a bunch of issues arose in their relationship, Shikla would do the unthinkable and ditch DP for the last man that her dad wanted her shacking up with, Dracula himself. It's fine, Deadpool's really in love with Mistress Death, so it's all good.
Number 7, Daredevil. Matthew Murdock has a tendency to dally with women who are living on the more dangerous side of life. Not all the women he dates are like this, just most of them. He's gotten pretty cozy with the former assassin Black Widow, and while she's definitely a hero who just was formerly a bad guy and never threatened Matthew's life or anything, he has also been involved with women who have threatened his life, literally. Echo attempted to kill him before after being manipulated into thinking Daredevil was to blame for the death of her father. All this also happened after their first date. Matt was able to convince her of the truth, causing her to double-cross Kingpin, but still, attempted murder is attempted murder. Typhoid Mary is another woman who Matt began to see before his Daredevil persona came in and just messed that up as well, by becoming her enemy after accidentally pushing her out of a window during a scuffle. Nothing ruins romance like throwing someone out of a window accidentally. And then of course there is Elektra. And heck, even Karen Page in Netflix and Marvel's Daredevil series was kinda shady. Number 6. Wolverine. I feel like being a male member of the X-Men means that you are bound to fall into the trap of falling in love with some kind of villainess at some point. Heck, even if you're a female, you might fall in love with a villainess. But especially if you are a straight male X-Men member. It's totally gonna happen to you then. And granted, a good number of them are straight and male, so pretty much applies to a lot of them. Wolverine, of course, is no exception. As a straight male member, he has fallen into the arms of the famous shape-shifting villainess Mystique, whose charms have allowed her to find herself involved with many male and female mutants. But beyond that, he also had a thing with Madame Hydra, aka Viper. She ended up kidnapping him and reminded him of a debt that he owed her. Out of honor, Wolverine agreed to repay the debt by doing as she asked and marrying her. Wow, that's a pretty big debt. She wanted Wolverine for more than just his personality and looks though. She was actually after his influence more than anything. And her marriage to him succeeded in getting her what she wanted, which was to become the princess and ruler of Madripoor. Later, in exchange for saving her life though, Wolverine was able to negotiate a divorce. Thank goodness. Number 5. Captain Comet. I really love this brief relationship that Starfire had with Captain Comet. Adam is seen mourning his sister in issue 18 of the Rebels comic series when Starfire decides to check in on him. When the two meet up, they end up having sex in anti-grav inside a spaceship. Starfire expresses that she would like to be friends with benefits. She confesses that physical intimacy she experiences with Adam makes her feel better as she is still getting over the heartbreak she experienced with Dick Grayson. When Captain Comet responds that it sounds like she still loves Dick, she says that she will always love him and that bestowing her heart to Dick was never alone. That the love she feels for others is always eternal. Such a beautiful Tamaran sentiment. People of Tamaran kind of know what's up, I think, in some ways. Number 4. Franklin Crandall. Starfire finds herself in love with a human man who goes by the name of Frank Crandall in the new Teen Titans Volume 1, Issue 16, out of the 80s. She meets Frank while she is doing some modeling work and instantly falls for his charm. Instant. It turns out Frank was a double agent working for Hive with a plan to backstab Starfire, but he truly falls in love with her and refuses to double cross her. This ends up in him getting shot and dying in Corey's arms. Dick is the one who confirms his death though, which has always made me a little suspicious. Poor Frank. Can we trust it? Maybe he was just trying to take Starfire for himself. What if Frank's still alive? The drama, the intrigue. Number 3. General Vision. General Vision was Starfire's second husband. He was there to assist when Evil Raven came to Tamaran to destroy Starfire, who of course had been instilled with Raven's good side, or with her soul sort of. Both he and the Titans fought against Evil Raven and successfully defeated her, granting a new body to the part of Raven that Starfire had within her and allowing Raven to be essentially resurrected. While this relationship was one of duty, Starfire seemed to genuinely care for her husband, and it was implied that the two would even start a family together when Raven observed that Starfire was with child. But this plot point would never be mentioned again, so that was the end of that, I guess. The general died in battle defending New Tamaran from the Sun Eater. Sad, all of her husbands die in battle. If you marry Starfire, you might die in battle, just saying. Especially on Tamaran where there's like lots of wars. Number 2. Dick Grayson, aka Nightwing. How is Dick only at number 2? Yeah, I feel your concern, but allow me to explain. While Dick and Corey truly love one another and probably will, at least part of them will, for all of time, they just aren't actually that great together. Both come from vastly different cultures, which could really be great if they actually found more space for compromise. As such, Dick often makes Starfire feel like she is an outsider. Meanwhile, Starfire is just running around usually breaking Dick's heart. What Dick really wants is to mold Starfire into the woman that he wants her to be. He tries to get her to adopt Earth customs and abandon her Tamaranian culture. Later on, the two considered starting a relationship again after a wedding that got interrupted and Starfire having to get married and a bunch of other stuff happening. But Starfire is actually hesitant to start the relationship again, asking if Dick even really loves her. And upon reflecting, he realizes no, he doesn't really love her. Ouch. At least not in that way. It's more of like a love you forever sort of love. Eternal love, but not like immediate love. You know what I mean? That's like the main thing about Starfire. All of her love affairs are very complex. It's great. Number 1. Roy Harper, aka Speedy, aka Arsenal. So while this relationship came out of one of Starfire's most controversial moments in the comics, it ended up being a pretty cute one that made enough of an impression to even get a mention in the children's cartoon Teen Titans Go on Cartoon Network, which I know a lot of you don't love, but it's pretty funny and pretty cute, so forgive me for liking it. Starfire kind of offhandedly offers to sleep with Roy when she first runs into him, which a lot of fans took issue with, feeling that she was simply being used as a device originally in the Red Hood and the Outlaw series, and not a character in her own right. However, the two ended up having a relationship that would last for quite some time during the series' run. Corey would have us believe that their relationship was mostly physical, and that for a Tamaran, emotions were not part of the lovemaking process. But when she received all of her memories back after ultimately deciding to help her sister take back Tamaran, she revealed to Roy that she truly did feel for him. This left Roy upset with her for lying about how she truly felt, but eventually the two overcame this revelation and ended up being better than ever together. Cute, I like it.
And it's an invisible woman. You thought that a Hydra cap was a bad thing? Well, if you saw my last Wolverine video, then you know that in the Enemy of the State storyline, Wolverine was killed and then resurrected by Hydra. They implanted him with fake memories, and then they did this with several other heroes. But Sue was Madame Hydra, leader of a Hydra organization that devastated this version of Earth. Well, while her dedication to Reed is typically strong, this version had her eyes set on Wolverine. So after killing and resurrecting him, she implanted fake memories that turned him into her boyfriend, before he ended up being way more useless than he should have been. You literally have a practically immortal super mutant, but you use him to get information from S.H.I.E.L.D. No thank you. Just conquer the world. We know they got down and dirty. They're villains. They don't have morals. They don't consider the consequences of their actions. You really think a little hanky-panky is out of the question? No. In at 9, Storm. Giant-sized X-Men number 1 brought together a new team of X-Men, all from different countries. Storm was from Africa and Wolverine came from Canada, eh? The two had powers and some form of nature about them that ties them to the wilds. They both had fierce tempers and didn't take crap from anyone, which could be why they were attracted to each other. They flirted constantly for years, but when Storm married T'Challa in Black Panther number 18, we thought it was the end. But like 50% of all marriages, Storm and T'Challa got divorced, which may have been bad news for her, even though they really didn't have any chemistry, and I mean, we all know why the writers put them together, but sure, it was sad for her. But it was wonderful for Wolverine. The two began running the Jean Grey School together and were finally officially a couple in Wolverine and X-Men number 24. With the lightning and sharp claws, the two certainly had fun. I mean, make a dangerous pair. Come on, we were all thinking it. And at 8, Elektra. The continuity of the MC2 universe is where I really want to focus on for this number. While on the main Marvel universe, Elektra and Wolverine don't go much beyond that, the MC2 alternate timeline focuses on the children of the superheroes we know and love. And in J2 number 5 from 1999, they introduced Wild Thing, the daughter of Elektra and Wolverine. We don't really know what happened between the two to get them so close that they had a kid, but it happened nonetheless. Maybe the kid is the reason they got together. Maybe it was a one-time thing that turned into something more. Who knows at this point? Not us. And at 7, Witchblade. The best person to have a one-night stand with, hot tips, is someone who lives in a completely separate dimension in continuity to you. So when Witchblade came along from the Image universe and crossed over with Wolverine in Witchblade/Wolverine in 2004, you know it was gonna get hot and heavy. Especially when you both lose your memories and then get married to each other due to false memories the villains gave you to torture you with the loss of each other when you inevitably have to go back to your world. Riveting. Witchblade was originally a cop named Sarah Pizzini, when a mystical gauntlet known as the Witchblade bonded with her to give her the power to cover herself with weapons and armor. Pretty freaking dope. As a king, I approve. But I mean, she obviously has good taste. That wedding dress was wonderful. And the whole, like, it's Wolverine. And at 6, Dazzler. Dazzler was first introduced in Uncanny X-Men number 30, where she was shown to have the power to turn sound waves into light. The light she could produce varied and could range to blinding strobe lights to laser beams. And while yes, she has been on the team since the 80s, she more so had her eyes set on Longshot to be more than her partner in anti-crime. Is that a thing? However, in 2012 came Wolverine The Best There Is number 12, where Wolverine had been used as essentially a human petri dish or test tube to grow an unstoppable virus created by the evil Contagion. After the ordeal, Wolverine wanted to move forward, get past it, and keep living life, which apparently meant going into Dazzler's room and sitting on her bed. She turned off the light and he moved forward. The series ended after that panel, but we all know their night was only beginning. I mean, probably. Gotta love them Wolverine pheromones. It's like that one song James Dean Death Scene made using the lines from Sips' video on the Stanley Parable. Like, A Wolverine got loose in the office. Somebody was alerted to this fact by the fact that Wolverines are very loud and they sing to goddamn high heaven as well. I like that song.
Number 5, Barry Allen, The Flash. A love almost as old as time. Barry Allen has loved Iris West since they were young. The two are together pretty much throughout Barry's whole story and are one of the most steady relationships in the DC superhero universe. Pre-New 52, Iris herself is depicted, depending on the story, as a reporter or a journalist, and was actually born in the 30th century but was raised in the 20th century after she was transported there at a young age and adopted. Barry's definitely flirted with some of his other superpowered colleagues, but he never feels compelled to act on any attractions that he might feel. To him, his true love will always be Iris. Usually every happy ever after story ending for Barry involves him and Iris being together. To them, being with one another is true happiness. So cute. Number 4, North Star. North Star is Jean-Paul Beaubier, a member of Alpha Flight and a member of the X-Men for a time as well. He is married to Kyle Genadou. He met Kyle through his sister Jean-Marie and through his love of snowboarding. His sister had asked her good friend Kyle to become a manager of Team North Star, her brother's extreme snow sports team, in hopes that Kyle would keep him out of trouble. The two ended up hitting it off and they started a relationship. After saving Kyle when he was kidnapped by the villainous group known as the Marauders, North Star decided to propose and the two were married. In fact, North Star was even concerned when he was invited to be on the X-Men that it might just be a PR stunt. He was like, I don't want to join if you just want me to be like your gay guy, which is cute. The X-Men were like, no, we just think you're cool. We like you. Number 3, Black Lightning. Well, Prime Earth Black Lightning has been established as having this specific relationship. Back before New 52, the New Earth Black Lightning was once married. He even had children. The CW show based on Black Lightning also follows in line with this version of Jefferson Pierce's backstory as a family man. Both in the show and comics, Lynn Stewart was Jeff's ex-wife, and in the show, despite being his ex, she was also still his love interest. Although they are divorced, the two remain amicable and still work hard to be good parents to their 2 daughters. I just think they have such a cute little family dynamic. Number 2, The Thing. Ben Grimm actually found love with a civilian woman known as Alicia Masters. If the name Masters sounds familiar to you, it's because you're thinking of puppet master Philip Masters, who, yes, is Alicia's stepfather. She was very young when Philip married her mother, and as a result, both she and her mother took his last name, instead of keeping her biological father's surname. Alicia has been involved with the Fantastic Four throughout the years. She was once used in a plot of her father's where she was disguised as Sue Storm, which, oddly enough, seemed to work pretty well. Apparently, she looks like identical to Sue Storm. And no one seemed to notice this ruse, despite the fact that Alicia Masters is blind. She then appeared to be married to the Human Torch later, despite the fact that it had previously been established that she literally looks identical to his sister, Sue Storm. Which is pretty weird. We're marrying someone who looks a lot like your sister. Anyways, but this wasn't Alicia anyways, it was a Skrull disguised as Alicia named Leisha. Alicia and Ben would date, break up, but later rekindle their romance and even get married. They tied the knot. Number 1, Wally West / The Flash. Pre-New 52, Wally West actually had an entire family with a civilian. He was married to Linda Park, a journalist, civilian, and the love of his life. The two had twins together, although Linda's pregnancy was randomly lost and restored in the comics. It's a whole weird thing. Still, the twins existed for a time in the main continuity and were named Jay and Iris II. Yeah, he named his daughter after his aunt. Their kids were even revealed to have their own unique speed powers and ties to the Speed Force, and even sometimes fought crime alongside their dad. I kind of miss this whole family dynamic. It was really cute. Let's make Wally happy again. Let's let him have a family again. Please. Please, DC, let it happen.
Starting us off in at number 10, Wasp. Let's begin our list with one of the stranger hookups that we'll be discussing today. Wasp and Magneto. Yup, that's a thing that happened. This went down in Secret Wars issue 3, the first Secret Wars, and it was only a one-night stand, but it is kind of creepy. Magneto makes a move on her and Janet is all like, wait, what? And then says no 3 times before he whips this trick out on her. I quote, "There was so little time, Janet," while practically rubbing his face up against hers. And then she eventually gives in by saying, "Oh, why not?" and then compliments his eyes. The whole thing is a little melodramatic, and needless to say, we're pretty okay with the fact that it didn't exceed that one-night stand. In at number 9, Crystal. Inhuman Princess Crystal and mutant speedster Quicksilver fell in love after she nurtured him back to health post-Sentinel attack. Now, this is when Quicksilver was still technically a mutant. He's a human mutate now after a retcon, but it counts. So the two got married and had a kid named Luna. Their wedding happened in Avengers issue 127 but was interrupted by Ultron, and then the two eventually officially tied the knot in Fantastic Four issue 150. The relationship went downhill from there though. Crystal cheated on him, and Quicksilver, who has a real bad temper, got abusive with her. He even shouted at her, I quote, "You and humans are nothing but a cult. You never had any room in your isolated world for a mutant," all while painfully gripping her wrist while she exclaims to him that he's hurting her. Dude, chill. The hell, man. Moving on to number 8, She-Hulk. So this number is kind of cheating because it involves Juggernaut, and he's not technically a mutant despite being Charles Xavier's stepbrother and also a member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But this hookup is kind of the hookup of all hookups when it comes to comic books, so we decided to include it on our list and give Kane Marco an honorary mutant status for it. Talking She-Hulk and Juggernaut, guys! For starters, Jennifer Walters gets way too much slack for being promiscuous. Iron Man Tony Stark is also a major hoe and doesn't get nearly as much heat, which is something that was actually brought up in the comics when those two hooked up. Anyway, we're not here to talk about She-Hulk's other hookups, but rather her hookup with a particular, not actually a mutant, that made shockwaves, possibly literally two, after it happened. Look at that bedroom damage! God! I don't know about you guys, but I'm like, those repairs do not look cheap. Anyway, that is a hookup, or at least a superhero hookup. This went down in Juggernaut issue 2. Now all these days this hookup has been kind of retconned. It was an alternate reality version of She-Hulk. It's still one that has managed to remain in our collective memories. Just why it gets a spot on this list too. Moving on to number 7, Spider-Man. While Peter Parker's most iconic romantic pairings are Mary Jane Watson and Gwen Stacy, the character has dated outside of the human race too. Once upon a time, Parker dated Marrow, aka Sarah Rushman, a mutant capable of growing skeletal structures outside of her body. Essentially, bones would painfully erect themselves outside of her skin, which she could use as a weapon, body armor, shields, you name it. Marrow had an awkward story arc where she was brainwashed by S.H.I.E.L.D. and believed that she was a student at Empire State University. There, she developed a crush on Parker, who was working there as a lecturer. Eventually, she discovered that he was Spider-Man, and the relationship fell apart after a few dates, with Marrow eventually being rid of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s influence. Well, that was not really a good time for Marrow in general. Up next at 6, Black Panther. Black Panther and Mutant Storm have had one of the most iconic and endearing relationships in Marvel's panels. T'Challa and Ororo have had a long-winded history together. They've been into each other since they were kids, and carried affection around in their hearts for one another for years and years. Then back in 2006, they actually tied the knot in a wedding that interrupted and paused the Civil War. Eventually, despite their chemistry together, T'Challa annulled their marriage because he felt that Storm had betrayed him by siding with the X-Men during AVX, so.
Number 5, Spider-Man. Just like Batman has his Catwoman, Spider-Man has his Black Cat. Is it crazy that both Marvel and DC have superheroes who evoke the look and abilities of a creature, and then both also coincidentally have feline-inspired criminal loves? I don't know. It's definitely some sort of stealing or something going on there. While Black Cat may not be as big of a main squeeze for Spider-Man as Catwoman is for Batman, the two have still had a long-standing on and off again relationship. And just like it's pretty set that Peter Parker will always go back to MJ, he will also always probably run off at some point with Black Cat. Originally a criminal and a thief, Felicia has gone from being a very bad kitty to a full-out superhero, but she always seems to be seduced back into the world of power and of crime. And while Peter may have a ton going on in terms of his romantic life, for Black Cat, he is actually her main squeeze. She often mentions how she isn't a huge fan of men in general, except for when it comes to the web crawler. Number 4, Storm. Aurora Monroe isn't someone who struck me originally as having a draw to the more evil side. Of course, I'm always thinking of, like, 90s Storm in the animated series just watering plants, making plants grow with her little localized storms. Despite how stormy she was made to look when using her powers in the X-Men films. Like, I mean, out of context, seeing Halle Berry's eyes go all white and just watch her start creating storm clouds and lightning bolts makes her look like some kind of villain out of a horror film. Do you know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning? It dies. It gets electrocuted and dies. So while many of us comic book nerds may now think of Storm as one of T'Challa's true loves, it's no surprise that she has felt the pull towards those less good once or twice. Like the time she spent with Dracula, or better yet, the time that Dr. Doom kidnapped her, and she actually kind of seemed to think that Victor was like a gentleman, and remarked that she was actually having a pretty good time. I mean, remarked in her mind bubbles, but yeah. Is it weird that I ship Doom and Storm? Doomstorm! Make it a thing! I think it could be fun. I'm probably like the only one. I'm sure I'm gonna say that and then no one in the comments is gonna be like, yeah, Dr. Doom and And Storm, that's what we want. Number 3, Lee Forrester. Okay, so I know Lee Forrester isn't a superhero per se, but she is pretty darn heroic. And while she might not be superpowered, she was definitely a superhero when it came to Cyclops' love life for a time. Scott was on the ropes when he met Lee. He was mourning the loss of Jean Grey, as he so often is, after the end of the Dark Phoenix saga. Taking some time away from the X-Men, he decided to join a crew and do some work with his hands for a while to help take his mind off of things. He ended up as a part of Lee Forrester's crew. She was his captain. And oh, Captain, my captain, did she have a thing for Scott from the beginning. Apparently, no one can resist Scott's brooding and mourning of Jean Grey. Their relationship was brief and included being marooned on a desert island alone together. Always romantic. Well, probably would have been more romantic if Magneto wasn't stranded with them too. Lee was really just what Scott needed at the time and potentially would have also made a great long-term partner for him as well. However, they decided to part ways after feeling their lives were just too different. Lee was a captain and a sailor, and Cyclops was an X-Men and a mutant. Though, oddly enough, their lives couldn't have really been that different, as they definitely still run into one another on occasion, cause comics. Lee even made Emma Frost jealous one time. You know you are a rival for romance if you're making Emma Frost jealous, just saying. Number 2, Jean Grey. Jean Grey is probably the love of Scott Summers' entire life, but that doesn't mean the two of them are the best thing for one another. In fact, I would argue that sometimes they are just the opposite. The beginning of their relationship seems mostly sweet and innocent, but everything went pretty awry once Jean got involved with the Phoenix Force and, well, died a few times. Nothing like one of you dying to wedge a divide between you and your betrothed. Eventually the two ended up married, but Scott had to abandon Madeline Pryor and his baby son for this to happen. And in the end, it didn't even end up working out, as Scott had a psychic affair with Emma Frost, while Jean seemed to retreat back to an emotional relationship with Logan. The two will always love one another deeply, but it doesn't mean that they'll always be the best thing for one another. All of their kids continue to be pretty OP though, so at least they have that. And I get that everyone wants to hold on to this relationship because it's iconic, but also maybe we need to let them grow. Maybe it's time. I don't know. Number 1, Emma Frost. While this couple may have started off on the wrong foot, a psychic affair and making out on Jean's grave, they have quickly become a fan favorite, with some even arguing that Emma is an even better fit for Scott than Jean is. While I'm reluctant to admit it, you might be right. The idea is that the two understand one another better, and Jean herself has even reappeared telepathically after her death to urge Scott to move on, giving the couple her blessing. Though honestly, I feel like that may have just been a ploy to quell all of the Emma/Cyclops hate that Marvel may have been getting. Still, the two have both helped one another in many ways, especially with Emma being an accomplished therapist, which honestly is what Scott Summers needs. Albeit one who did offer to sleep with Scott when he was her patient, and she knew he was married because so was his wife Jean, as they were in couples counseling, so they're kind of both her patients at the time. But still, if you can put aside where their relationship came from, it's really a strong one. And one that in the end I believe was better for both of them. I'm still waiting on that Emma/Scott/Jean triad though, or you know, that Scott, Jean, Logan triad. Just give me one of those. Come on comics, give me a triad. Thank you so much for watching, Nerd Squad. I hope you enjoyed this list. Who do you think is one of the most iconic loves of Scott's? Are you Team Jean or Team Emma? Or do you ship him vehemently with someone else? Speaking of someone else, it's time for that honorable mention. Today's honorable mention goes to Madeline Pryor, who isn't really the superhero type, and so I couldn't really mention her on the list, cause, you know, top 10 superheroes Cyclops hooked up with. Superheroes. Still, their relationship was insane and epic, and Maddie deserves a shout out for everything she's been forced to endure in the comics. Hopefully I get to talk about my favorite Goblin Queen and Scott on another list, because without them, we would not have Cable. And that's reason enough alone to give them some list love. Number 10, Cable and X-23. This relationship was somewhat implied in the second volume of Fallen Angels from 2019. Here, young Cable and X-23, aka Wolverine, aka Laura Kinney, are brought together to join Quantin's Psylocke on a mission to uncover the location of her daughter and what happened to her. During the series, there were lots of great flirting and bantery moments between young Cable or Kid Cable and X-23. We'd also learn in the Cable series from the same period that young Cable was popular on the island, dating actually a bunch of young and eligible mutant ladies. While X-23 and Cable's relationship never really seemed to grow into anything permanent, it was still a fun time and kind of a random ship that seemed to work surprisingly well. Of course, this was before Laura got with Sync during their time together in the vault, but that of course might be a story for another list, if you're unfamiliar with that one. Also, if you are, goodness, I need to put that on a list because it's such a lovely relationship. Number 9. Batman and Batgirl. Batman and Batgirl. Oh boy. We've talked about this one before on the channel, but it's such an unlikely pairing that it's pretty easy to miss if you're not aware of it. And if you're new, I mean, welcome to this awkwardness, because you've probably never heard me tell you about it before. These two ended up together in the animated universe, where in Batman Beyond it was suggested that the two had a relationship. We later learned through the Batman Beyond comics set in that same world that not only did this happen, but that Barbara and Bruce, who already are typically more portrayed as having a mentor and teacher relationship, hooked up behind Dick Grayson's back while he was away. And that their time together actually resulted in Barbara becoming pregnant with Bruce's child. The baby never made it to full term, and the loss of the potential child did end the relationship between Batgirl and Batman. Although we'd still revisit that in another animated movie, but yeah. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to hear me talk about more relationships that you might have missed, especially between superheroes, or at least one of them being a superhero, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, because I would love to give you that list. And don't forget to smash that like. Thumbs up. Number 8. Speed and Prodigy. This one might just be selfishly included for me, because it's a relationship that I personally always forget about. So I'm gonna include it here in case you, like me, also somehow forgot about this one. I think the reason this one gets overlooked in my mind is just because of the big energy that we get from Hulkling and Wiccan's relationship, which kinda tends to overshadow Wiccan's brother Tommy, aka Speed, and what he has going on. I love Prodigy though, and every time I read him, it helps to jog my memory. Every time I'm reading about Prodigy, I'm like, oh yeah, Prodigy's with Speed. Also, these two were both kind of on the back burner for a while, but guess what? If you're a shipper of Speed and Prodigy together, they're kinda back together in the forefront, and of course better than ever. At least somewhat in the forefront. I mean, I don't think they're gonna be beating Hulkling and Wiccan in terms of being in the forefront anytime soon, but those two together are like so cosmic. Number 7. Superman and Luma Linei. Superman and Luma Linei were brought together by Supergirl, who wanted to help her cousin, Kal-El, find the perfect mate. Trying her hand at playing matchmaker, Supergirl found for him the superpowered blonde Luma Linei. Luma actually looked pretty much exactly like Supergirl, which sounds awkward, but that was kind of the whole point of this match. In Action Comics Volume 1, issue 289, Supergirl tries setting up Superman 3 times, and the third time only seems to stick because Superman actually shares with Supergirl that if he had to marry anyone, he wanted to be someone just like her. Well, that's not weird at all. Your cousins. That's not weird at all. So Supergirl heads to the planet Starro, locating a match that is remarkably similar to a grown-up version of her. Fortunately, Luma can't come back to Earth. Oh no. Because our yellow sun is harmful to her, despite giving Superman his powers. So the two are only together for this one issue, and then they're basically forced apart forever. Well, Superman actually offers to stay with Luma on her home world instead, but she just refuses the offer in tears, because comics. Superman's gotta be Superman, so he's like, I can't actually marry you, so I need you to refuse me, please. The writers were like, that's how we'll get him out of this one. Great. Number 6. Iron Man and Emma Frost. One that I'm still waiting to happen in the comics is the coupling of Tony Stark and Emma Frost. Okay, so admittedly, that is a thing that kind of already happened. Tony and Emma used to be friends with benefits for a time, and it was referred to back by the two of them in issue 3 of the 2006 Civil War series. But what I'm talking about here is actually a foreshadowed wedding that was mentioned in History of the Marvel Universe issue number 6. This was something that was intended to be coming up that hadn't happened yet. I'm not necessarily holding my breath for this one, as plans in the mutant lineup have kind of changed of late, but I'm still keeping my eye out for these two to come together, and maybe you should too, because that future might not be so far away. That way you can also join me on my aha moment when and if it does come to pass. And then when it happens, you too can be in on it, and you can be like, I knew it! We talked about it on this list. Number 5. Wolverine. Wolverine has almost had as many non-powered lovers as he's had powered lovers, and a lot of these romances have tended to be his happiest while also being his most tragic, because a lot of his non-powered loves have ended up dead. Are you noticing a pattern yet here? Among some of his most important and most dead of his ex-lovers are Itsu, who is also the mother of Daken, but died before he was born. Daken was actually horrifyingly cut from her womb and taken by her killer. Gross. Maureen, his wife from the Old Man Logan universe, Mariko, and Silver Fox. Dead, 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 super dead. Number 4. Superman. While Superman may not have a ton of romantic hookups with civilians, I mean, it's Superman, he's not really big on hookups to begin with, more of the settle down with one gal type, he has had one pretty big one, and that is his great love story with Lois Lane. Although in the New 52, DC really tried to make Superman and Wonder Woman a thing, the fact remains that Lois will always be his main squeeze. And if he's not with Lois, then it's got to be great love number 2, Lana Lang, Superman's canonically a very first high school sweetheart. Depending on which retcon you're reading. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Don't overthink it. Number 3. She-Hulk. She-Hulk has actually ended up with more than one civilian. She has a very strange relationship with a dude named Rory, who basically was one of the most pessimistic people I've ever met in the comics, especially given his random luck. He ends up winning big at a casino and running into the gorgeous, brilliant, and strong Jennifer Walters. He also ends up as a pal of the Man-Thing, and yet he can't help but always focus on the negative. Rory, just like focus on the positive sometimes. This is probably why everything always ends up eventually going south for him. It's rumored he was based on Steve Gerber, who was actually the writer for the issue of Man-Thing that Rory first appeared in, and Man-Thing in general. She-Hulk has also gotten romantic and physical with other civilians, some of who were problematic and some of who were pretty great actually, such as Zapper, Wyatt Wingfoot, and Mika, an underwear model. Number 2. Spider-Man. Peter Parker has also had many famous civilian love interests, his two primary ones being Mary Jane Watson, MJ, and Gwen Stacy. But even before there was Gwen Stacy, there was another normal person that he was romantically attached to, Betty Brant. Well, normal except for the fact that her name's like kind of an alliteration. Betty Brant. Betty Brant was J. Jonah Jameson's secretary. The two met at work and began dating as early as issue 9 in the very first Amazing Spider-Man comic. Gwen Stacy actually wouldn't even be introduced until issue 31. Fun fact. So Betty was there first. Number 1. Batman. Well, Batman has had a number of supervillain and superhero pairings when it comes to his relationships, though likely more villains than heroes have been with Batman, to be honest. He has also been with some pretty normal people as well. Normal. In Gotham? Who's normal in Gotham, really? Quite a few civilians actually for Batman. His list includes the first love that we were introduced to of Batman's, Julie Madison, his fiancée. She was originally an actress but was also retconned quite a few times, so she's done other things as well. One of the reasons why the two didn't tie the knot was that Bruce found out that she was just after his fortune. Wah wah wah. Batman has also been with civilians Vesper Fairchild, a Gotham radio host, the famous reporter and photographer Vicky Vale, and he almost tied the knot with socialite Silver St. Cloud. He even briefly dated Soup's main squeeze Lois Lane. Yep. Oh yeah, and word to the wise, if you are dating Batman and you're a civilian, it is super dangerous! A lot of his lovers and ex-lovers end up dead and often murdered by his foes. Just like everybody else that dates supers in this list. Pretty much. She-Hulk is a safe one to date, I think. Number 10. Power Girl. In the World's Finest Comics, Volume 1, Issue 11, multiple worlds being the stipulation here, worlds, Power Girl gets tricked into hooking up with Desaad. He is under the guise of the handsome Michael Holt, aka Mr. Terrific. As such, Karen Starr, while at a party, ends up in his arms, until he reveals his true identity to her. Huntress and Power Girl both see that it is not truly Holt though, but Desaad in disguise, and start attacking him. But apparently not everyone could see what they saw, resulting in them being attacked by guards who think that they are just attacking Holt. Desaad and Power Girl definitely make a squicky picture. Ugh. It was short-lived, but that was all we needed, really. That's enough of that. Number 9. Supergirl. While Supergirl mostly likes to keep her relationships on the good side of things, she didn't start off on the best foot with that. Poison Ivy was actually apparently her first kiss, attempting to bring her over to the dark side, or rather, I guess the green side. The other thing about the issue where this happens is Harley even makes a pass at Supergirl too, offering to kiss her boo-boos better after smashing the hero with a hammer. Number 8. Starfire. Okay, so these two that I'm about to talk about are a pair that constantly get shipped, and for good reason. There's a lot of love between these fellow Teen Titans. Love that gets pretty brutally sexy in the wedding issue of New Titans. Issue 100 of Volume 3 focuses on the wedding between Dick Grayson's Robin and Starfire. It is off to a rocky start as the pair have their love protested against because of Starfire's alien heritage, but ends up being filled with love and beauty. Until a demonic Raven crashes it, that is. Raven has lost control of her soul and as such has turned pretty evil. What's a girl to do but crash your old friend's wedding, confess your love for the bride, and then make out with her, injecting her with another soul of one of Trigon's children. I mean, hey, If that isn't what true love is about, then what is?
In at number 7, Zatanna and Constantine. So, Constantine classifies as part demon. He once got a blood transfusion from the demon lord Nergal. Nergal is a demon, which is enough to classify him as a demon half in this pairing. Now, when Zatanna first hit the scene, many of her adventures consisted of trying to find her birth father. This quest led her to the Justice League of America, further colliding her with other heroes, including Constantine. Now, after she found Daddy Dearest, her and John would have an on and off again affair while he was dating one of his other love interests, Emma. This affair would always be complicated by the fact that Constantine was somewhat responsible for her father's death, having been the one who organized a seance in which her dad sacrificed himself to protect her. The romance would continue to be explored after the New 52 relaunch in the Justice League Dark, with the two of them being exes, but on good and civil terms. Now, we'll be talking about some other demonic love interests of Constantine later on in our list, where he is actually the more human half. But for now, on to our next number. In at 6, my personal favorite, Mephisto and Rogue. Oh, this pairing kills me. It is so absurd and so weird, and of course it's Rogue. Remember when she shacked up with Magneto for a hot second in the 616 and then for a long minute in the Age of Apocalypse timeline? Yeah, girls got some interesting taste in love interests, and also a thing for dudes with the letter M as their first initial. But not Gambit, he doesn't count. Once upon a time, there was a fun little miniseries called Mephisto vs. the Marvel Universe, and in it, he was all about collecting those hot female superhero souls for his lonesome self. He hit up the Invisible Woman first, then Jean Grey, and then by the 3rd issue, he had his sights set on Rogue. Rogue's thoughts during this brief entanglement consists of her debating about whether or not she's feeling this demonic makeout. She goes through an emotional roller coaster, stating that her mind is blown by the fact that she's able to touch someone and kiss someone, but then she is triggered by the fact that it is with, I quote, a creature like Mephisto. She then gets freaked out by the fact that he is old, or as she puts it, so incredibly old. Now, after they kiss, Rogue is almost mean about it, saying, I quote, "You're like me. No one ever wants to touch you, to know you. Only with you, it's like 100,000 times worse." She's basically like, oh man, my life sucks, but yours is so much worse, dude. Like, you're way more lonely than I am. And he legit responds with, bah, spare me your pity, as if he's like not hurt by it. She's so mean. Rogue then Nancy Drews his MO of taking souls as a substitute for real contact, and then she makes it about her, so he macks her some more to get her to shut up. Problematic storylines, gotta love them, but it's a demon. Anyway, long story short, Rogue absorbs his soul collecting abilities, and then he tries to use her in the 4th issue to steal Thor's soul, and then it's revealed that this was all just a convoluted scheme to screw around with Hela. Yeah. And also apparently to get some. In at number 5, Namor. Namor has hooked up with a mutant before, and that mutant's name is Emma Frost. I mean, I kinda get it. He's attractive in that whole arrogant King of Atlantis way, right? Maybe? Despite him looking like an aging genie going through a midlife crisis the first time that we're led to assume that they met, the two had a previous history together, when Namor had been invited to the Hellfire Club by Sebastian Shaw. Namor was not interested in the Hellfire Club though. He sure as hell was interested in Emma. She seduced him, and after the fact, Shaw had their hookup wiped from Emma's memory. The sexual chemistry between the two has been palpable ever since. Speaking of Emma Frost though, that brings us to our next number. In at number 4, Iron Man. Yes, Iron Man and Emma Frost. Of course Tony Stark has hooked up with at least one mutant, and of course it was Emma Frost. The two of them are undoubtedly tens, and I think we'd be insulted if they hadn't have hooked up in the past. While unfortunately we never got to see that hookup happen on panel, it is referred to in Civil War issue 3 while Tony visits Emma in Westchester. Tony asks her, I quote, "Does Cyclops know about that little arrangement we used to have when neither of us were dating?" To which Emma responds, "Cyclops knows everything, Tony. He can't keep secrets from my telepathic mind, so it's only fair that I don't keep anything from him." Friends with benefits, people. Moving on.
Number 3, Forge. These two fell for one another after Forge nursed Storm back to health after she was depowered. Aww. Storm, however, would later discover that Forge was actually responsible for her accidental depowering, causing her to get quite cross with him and putting a rift between the two. And understandably so. I wouldn't be happy if someone depowered me either, accident or no. She later sought Forge out again, looking for help having her powers restored, but once the two found one another, they ended up being trapped in an alternate dimension. Wah wah wah. They were stuck there for a year, granting them time to make peace and make out, falling back in love with one another. Forge managed to give Aurora back her powers by deconstructing his cybernetic leg and using the components to build a device that allowed him to restore them. Comics, am I right? Storm then used her powers to return them to her own dimension. Unfortunately, Forge's own insecurities ended up causing the two to split. Forge had proposed to Storm, but because she hesitated momentarily, he rescinded his marriage proposal. He did did not even wait for her to answer, assuming she couldn't possibly truly love him. How dare you hesitate? I feel like you have to be very confident to be with Storm. You really have to know your own worth. Come on, know your own worth, Forge. She loved you. She loved you. Could've had Storm. Number 2. Wolverine. Aurora ended up with Wolverine after her breakup with Black Panther. While Logan and Aurora had worked together for years before this, their relationship was generally viewed as a strong platonic one. But upon her separation from T'Challa and returning to the X-Men, things started to heat up between her and Logan. The relationship actually looked like it was gearing up to be one of the best ones either had ever had so far. So of course, the comics had to find some way to ruin these two X-Men's happiness by killing off Wolverine. I know, so tragic. Leaving Storm behind to mourn him. Even before these two ended up together in the comics, we also saw them together in the animated 90s cartoon. Well, an alternate version of the main characters, but still, it happened. Number 1. Black Panther. These two met when they were very young. Storm saved the young prince and a romance blossomed between the two, but T'Challa's responsibilities would take him away from his love Storm until much later. As adults, they found one another and fell back in love again. The two were even married, and Storm became the Queen of Wakanda. Unfortunately, while they made a great couple and stood united through many conflicts, including the first Civil War, they eventually split. During the Avengers vs. X-Men storyline, Black Panther named the mutants enemies after Wakanda suffered an attack from Namor. T'Challa accused Aurora of abandoning her people when she chose to side with the X-Men, and this caused a huge split between the two. Number 10. Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight. If you're a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe or the MCU, you may have missed this slight but important detail. Thanos' loyal servants and members of the Black Order, Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight, are actually in a romantic relationship with one another. And not only that, but they happen to be pretty happily married. Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight first stepped on the scene in the comics with the rest of the Black Order in 2013, and straight out of the gate they were established as a married couple. I love when two badass villains can find one another and basically become an epic power couple. It's a weird, work-related relationship that I think happens to be great. Both have boasted of one another's powers and skills as a fighter and tactician, and whenever one gets into a fight or into trouble, the other is usually not too far behind. Talia al Ghul and Bane. While this one never went super far in the comics, Bane and Talia were at the very least engaged. And in fact, Bane was head over heels in love with the head of the demon's daughter. This all happened during the story Legacy, where Bane was inducted into Ra's al Ghul's League of Assassins. Ra's saw potential in Bane and believed that he could be the heir he'd been so often searching for, especially considering his first pick, Batman, refused Ra's al Ghul's offer to become his inheritor. To solidify this, Ra's offered Talia's hand, and Bane and Talia were engaged. However, after Batman defeated Bane in combat, Talia had grounds to break off the engagement, as it was proven that Bane was basically not worthy of her. Something she was really happy about, as she never liked Bane to begin with, but that left Bane brokenhearted. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you are loving when villains get love from other villains, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Emma Frost and Sebastian Shaw. While they might be more enemies who are forced to work with one another currently in the comics, there was a time when they were lovers. Or at least a time when Emma saw the value in flattering Sebastian by lavishing him with attention. It was implied that they were lovers, at the very least. This was back in Emma's Hellfire Club days, so back when she herself was a villain, as was Shaw at the time. And although Krakoa is a place for all mutants and provides another chance for many mutant villains to redeem themselves, I would still consider Shaw to be a villain even today. Even in the comics right now, I think he's a villain. During their Hellfire days, while Emma did not always like the way Shaw treated her, she recognized that he was a powerful ally. Because of this, she would often accept his compliments and even actively flirt with him. Although I don't think their relationship was ever fully confirmed, it was definitely implied. In issue 152, when Shaw is defeated during his and Emma's body swap with Storm scheme, Emma even seems saddened to see him hurt and declares that the Hellfire Club is nothing without Shaw. Number 7. Penguin and Riddler. In the live-action series Gotham, these two have a complicated relationship. They became friends after Edward Nygma rescued Oswald Cobblepot, nursing him back to health after he was left for dead. As their bond of friendship grew over time, Oswald began to realize that he was in love with Edward. This caused Oswald to kill Nygma's girlfriend at the time, Isabella, whom Ed was in love with. When Ed discovered how his friend had betrayed him and learned this was because Penguin was in love with him, Nygma swore revenge on his once best friend. While the two have gotten into all kinds of trouble together and also caused one another a lot of pain in this show, they also have shown that they care about one another a great deal, and often find it hard to go on without the other. It might not always be out in the open, but it's clear that there is definitely some romantic energy and sexual tension between these two, more often than not. Number 6. Dr. Doom and Morgan Le Fay. A couple that weirdly makes a lot of sense, despite how many problems they ran into with one another. Both Morgan Le Fay and Dr. Doom are known for their unstoppable level of power, and both have ties to the mystical realm. Although I personally think of Dr. Doom primarily as a schemer and a brainiac, he is also deeply entrenched in the world of magic and mysticism, recognizing the power that it brings. As such, Doom decided to travel to the past and seek out Morgan Le Fay to become his teacher. She became more than that though, and would also become his lover. However, when he refused to bring her a token of affection via an object from the future, the love affair and magic lessons quickly came to an abrupt halt. Morgan became suspicious of Doom and decided she was just gonna try and kill him. She was unsuccessful there, but did successfully manage to break things off with Doom, and vice versa with her murder attempt. Number 5. Captain America and Iron Man. I mean, I knew I was going here as soon as I started to think up ideas for this list. Did you know we were going here? Cause yeah, we're going here. There is actually an alternate version of Captain America and Iron Man that did hook up, in a reality where Iron Man was born a woman instead of a man, and was known as Natasha Stark. She and Cap ended up married to one another, which obviously resolves a lot of issues they otherwise would have had, preventing them from existing. Civil War? I'm looking at you. I think basically these two hooking up could help resolve some of the tension between them, if that's something that they were both into, of course. Or I guess if one of them was a lady, we already know how that would play out. They would just get married, so yeah. Number 4. Storm and Thor. This is a ship a lot of people have. I think there was a reality where these two did get together. All I remember from it is them wearing ugly Christmas sweaters and sending out a holiday greeting card with a picture of the two of them in said sweaters. Oh yeah, that was from one of the alternate realities featured in Marvel What Now, which is the reality where they get married. The Thorms are what they call themselves there as a ship, and they do have that holiday card. And we have seen a look at a design for what their daughter might look like as a character who's going to possibly appear in one of the Exile series, a potential character dreamed up by Saladin Ahmed and Javier Rodriguez, called Thunderstorm, although that wasn't the same reality as the other one in What Now, just to be clear. But we still have yet to see these two hook up in the main continuity, which is fair. I mean, I'm personally still hoping that one day Aurora and T'Challa might get back together when the time is right for both of them. Number 3. Batman and Wonder Woman. These two heroes come from two completely different worlds. One is just a man with a lot of skills, and the other is literally a demigod at this point. But that doesn't stop DC fans the world over from shipping these two together. I think the appeal here between these two is that they are so different. Wonder Woman is light, Batman is dark, Wonder Woman is god level, Batman is highly skilled, but still just a man. I think people like the contrast. And how does the saying go? Opposites attract? Maybe that could be the case for these two. Both in and outside of main continuity, these two have had many flirty moments to help keep the dream of them ending up together alive for us when it comes to our own headcanon and romance fantasies. Number 2. Winter Soldier and Captain America. Even if it'll probably never happen in the comics or the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there are still tons of fans when it comes to this ship. People are just real big fans of the idea of these two besties getting it on and taking their relationship to new heights. Winter Soldier and Captain America as a bromance turned romance is very much a ship that I think really comes from the cinematic universe, although I could definitely see some elements of it in the comics as well. I mean, seeing Sebastian Stan's and Chris Evans' heartwarming bromantic chemistry on screen myself, I get where these shippers are coming from. If you look for it, there are tons of fanfics featuring these two together, and the ship is so popular it even has been given the combination name of Stucky, Steve and Bucky put together. Stucky. Number 1. Catwoman and Black Cat. Two thieving ladies teaming up, stealing stuff, and falling in love. What could be better than that? In a magical crossover world, perhaps the same one where Ryan Reynolds' versions of Deadpool and Green Lantern meet, these two could potentially get together, and I know I could see them hitting it off. Both have been considered heroes, and both have been considered villains, and often both of them live sort of in the middle area between those two labels. Also, would they not be the hottest couple ever and just melt all of our brains? I'm pretty sure they would. Fun fact, both Selena and Felicia have been confirmed as bisexual bisexual too, I believe, in the comics. So yay, more bi babes, and also that just means that this definitely could happen. Also, how is it that we have like a world where Selena and Penguin get together, and we don't yet have a world where Catwoman and Black Cat get together? What is that? We need Amalgam back so this can happen. Number 10, Donna Troy, aka Wonder Girl. Okay, so admittedly, this one is kind of more fan service than anything else. Still, Donna Troy is one of Starfire's oldest friends. An Amazonian herself, she used to be Wonder Woman's sidekick, Wonder Girl, and was actually one of the original Teen Titans before even Starfire was part of the team. Donna has since retired and became a photographer. In fact, Starfire even modeled for Donna at one point. The two women have a strong bond that, while perceived by many as simply an intense friendship, could be seen as a love affair from a different angle. The two have confessed their love for one another in the comics before, and seeing as how Starfire's intense emotional bonds with those she meets often translate into something physical, I would not be surprised if we later discovered there was more going on between these two off-panel. Number 9, Prince Karas. What you may not know is that Starfire is polyamorous, and this actually comes from her culture. On Tamaran, it's acceptable to be married and have a lover. When duty demands that she must marry Prince Karas to unite the southern states and Tamaris, Starfire follows through and accepts an arranged marriage. After she and Karas are married, Dick abandons her, unable to stay and be her lover as she asks. He claims that his morals cause him to be unable to accept her and her people's culture. He leaves Tamaran, encouraging Starfire to forget about him, as he will try to do for her, as she shouts after him that she loves him. I love you, I love you, I love you. He hears it like all the way in space. Karas was also not super excited about the marriage, as he loved another as well, a lieutenant who served with him named Tarja. Starfire accepted their love, and eventually her and Karas developed their own fondness for each other, though Starfire did choose to move back to Earth, which Karas seemed fine with. Tarja would end up conceiving Karas' child, though Karas would die well before the birth, falling in battle. He was mourned by both Tarja and his wife, whom were left to comfort one another. Sad. Number 8, Animal Man. These two have a one-sided romance, unrequited if you will. Animal Man's family ended up taking Starfire in to nurse her back to health after she returned his jacket to them but collapsed as a result of her injuries. Buddy and his wife Ellen allowed Starfire to continue to live with them as their nanny. During this time, potentially even before this actually, during her adventures with Animal Man and Adam Strange, Buddy developed feelings for Starfire. Later, Starfire confessed that she did not love him and ended up leaving their home at the end of the series, Countdown to Adventure, feeling that it was best for the household, but promising that she would always keep the entire family unit in her heart, revealing that she cared deeply for Ellen, Buddy, and their 2 children. Starfire just loves everyone. It's super cute, unless you double cross her. Number 7, Thor. What? When did this happen? In the comic Marvel Now What, we get these short little stories, and one such story imagines a universe where Storm and Thor end up together, reasoning that their parallel control over lightning should make them the perfect match. We see their wedding and what their arguments would be like. I can't imagine things would go smoothly during any Avengers vs. X-Men events, but other than that, I agree with the comic that poses they might just end up being the cutest comic book couple to ever exist, should they forge a romantic relationship in the main continuity of Earth 616. Too cute for us to handle. They got little Christmas sweaters on their lightning bolts. So cute. Number 6, Yukio. Yukio is an expert combatant and longtime friend of both Wolverine and Storm. In fact, Storm met Yukio through Wolverine, and Yukio even raised Wolverine's daughter Amiko, as though she were her own, for Logan, becoming her adoptive mother. Though Storm and Yukio's relationship has never really been, confirmed in the comics, it's definitely implied. The two flirt quite a bit, and who's to say what could be happening off-panel between the two powerful women? I'm thinking it's some sexy stuff though. Sexy. Yukio is actually the reason we got one of Storm's most iconic looks, her punk-inspired look with her awesome mohawk, but although the two have had some fun together, Yukio has never been quite the right fit for Storm. The danger that Yukio brings with her is tantalizing to Storm, invoking the nostalgia of her past life as a thief, but ultimately her responsibility as an X-Men often causes distance between the two, though they have stayed fast friends, often resurfacing in one another's lives every now and again. They're so cute together.
Moving on to number 5, we have Luke Cage and Silver Sable, and Priapus. Okay, so here's a slightly odd addition to our list, and one that was done without consent, making it particularly nasty in retrospect. Consent matters. Seriously, jokes aside. Anyway, back to the silliness. It involves the demon Priapus, like I mentioned, who first graced the pages of Marvel's comics in 1993 in Terror Inc. issue 10. He is the Greek god of male fertility and horticulture. He is also also a demon who is said to be very physically endowed, yet horribly ugly. A walking paradox. I'll let y'all make that call for yourselves though. He also claims that ecstasy is his life, so that's a thing apparently. In 1993, the two heroes alongside Terror fought against Priapus in a crossover story called Cage, For Love Nor Money. During the battle, Priapus incapacitates both Cage and Sable with orgasms. He does this by kissing Sable and then touching Cage on the head, and then gives him this whole long dry speech while they're just shaking there dealing with these allegedly mind-blowing orgasms. Can't even make this up, guys. In at number 4, Mystique and Azazel. X-Men member Nightcrawler is the product of a mutant and a demon rubbing nasties. Mystique, his biological mother, who is blue and has shape-shifting abilities, hooks up with Azazel after developing a crush on the Niafem. In Uncanny X-Men issue 428, Mystique, who wants to get married to the demon, learns the hard way that sometimes dudes just want a one-night stand with a blue mutant inside of a church. In the aftermath, Azazel is all like, "Girl, never confuse physical passion for a condition of the heart. Since the dawn of mankind, the two have rarely gone hand in hand." She's like, yeah. Whoa. But also is still like really upset about it because she does like kind of love him. He's just like the ultimate demon boy. He also impregnates her with Nightcrawler, who she is forced to abandon in order to save from an angry mob. But Azazel's like, yo, I'ma save you and then give you to my sister and then everything is dope. He did that too. He's hip, he is with the kids. And at number 3, Etrigan and Lady Xanadu and Lady Blaze. Etrigan loves the ladies. He is also another double whammy on our list. So for starters, Etrigan is Jason Blood, a mortal man bound to the demon Etrigan, meaning they share their love interests, which sometimes gets complicated. In Batman the Dark Knight issues 4 and 5 back in 2011, Etrigan makes an appearance when hunting down a demon running rampant in Gotham. Turns out this demon is a servant of Lady Blaze's, who then strikes up a deal with Etrigan to fully restore his power in exchange for him being her consort. Jason Blood is like, nah man, I'm good. Like, this chick's a demon, I think I'm going to pass. But Etrigan is like, yes please, and overpowers Jason. Etrigan eventually realizes that Blaze is lying in order to take advantage of him. Teardrop. It's not gonna get some, demon boy. And then there's the R-rated romance of Etrigan and Lady Xanadu. Xanadu has a polymorphous, polyamorous relationship with Etrigan, which she gives us insight on in Demon Knights issue 8 from 2012. She agrees to be with Jason, wanting to marry him, but Etrigan wants to ensure that he is getting some action too. He states that he wants to mate with Xanadu over a long period of time, and often. Xanadu goes along with it, lying to the demon, admitting that she likes to, you not, cuckold Etrigan. Sorry kids, it's nasty. In at number 2, Constantine and a lot of other demons. Zatanna is definitely one of Constantine's higher quality hookups compared to some of the other individuals in the DC universe that he's knocked dirties with. And by quality, I mean she is human, or rather a metahuman, but that's still totally fine. She's got all the normal human bodily bits that you would expect a human being to have. But Constantine, oh, he has a variety of preferences. Yes, he does. He's hooked up with a succubus named Ellie plenty of times. Ellie's true form involves very aggressive nipples and this demonic aesthetic. Fun. He also once helped out a virgin by having sex with her and placing his demonic taint within her so she didn't have to get married to an angel. Ugh, don't you just hate when that happens, when you have to get married to an angel and then you just gotta get romantic with the demon to ensure that you just never go into heaven, or maybe just probably going to hell, and you know, it's tough. Modern dating. But there is a time worse than that for sure. In Hellblazer issue 200 from 2004, Constantine rubbed nasties with a demoness named Rosa Carnus. This occurred when he traded one day of his life in exchange for not being burned at the stake. Seems like a decent deal, right? But nah, she a demon, my dude, so she used her powers to have this day play out in 3 simultaneous possible realities in which they do the nasty and she tries to sire 3 demon messiahs. Now that's, talk about a rough one-night stand. There's a lot of demonic seductresses in this, but also like I guess Mephisto was really bad. Gender parity, guys. Any demon can be a terrible demon who wants to have sex with you and ruin your life. And finally, in at number 1, saved the biggest for last, Hulk and Umar. The Hulk has had his fair share of romances, but none is as wacky as his hookup with Umar, the demon sister of the mystical entity Dormammu. She's his little sis. It's kind of hard to imagine him having any family whatsoever, but this is a thing. She also lives in a tower where she like kind of kidnaps the Hulk and then hooks up with him, as seen in Defenders issue 3. And Oh boy, at first he wasn't feeling it at all, so like there's some consent issues there, but then wha-bam. After 6 whole minutes of them doing the dirty, he can't take it. He's so overwhelmed with ecstasy that he can't keep up with her. He even reverts back to Bruce Banner afterwards. Now, keep in mind, almost nothing is capable of reverting Hulk back to Banner. Once upon a time, like, the only thing that worked was puppies. So apparently Bruce Banner will not be the Hulk if you give him puppies or mind-blowing sex. Take what you will from that. Umar would make a cameo later on in The Incredible Hulk issue 633 when he was Worldbreaker Hulk. She showed up in a portal that was shaped like a mouth and chilled him out by having sex with him, of course. This time with their banging, forming a giant mushroom cloud in the process. Yeah.
Number 10. Emma Frost. Not everyone may know that Emma Frost, despite being a confident badass now, actually had quite a troubled past. While she was born into a fairly well-off family, her father, Winston Frost, was very strict and controlling. Despite Emma being the youngest, her father eventually decided that she was actually best suited to be his heir, dismissing both her sisters Adrienne and Cordelia, who were both older than her, and her older brother Christian. Christian, in fact, was practically ostracized from the family after it was revealed that he was gay. This led Christian to turn to drugs, and he was eventually sent to a mental institution. Oof, rough. It was around this time that Emma decided she no longer wanted to be her father's heir, and decided to leave her family behind and make a life for herself. During this time, she met Troy Kilkelly, a civilian who would later become her boyfriend and whom she would live with. It was eventually revealed that Troy owed money to some pretty seedy characters, and while Emma tried to use her abilities to erase their debts, in the end Troy ended up being killed as a result of those debts. Oof. Number 9. The Atom. Before there was Marvel's Hank Pym, there was DC's The Atom. The Atom is Ray Palmer, a man who can shrink to the size of an atom and is also a brilliant physicist. We originally were introduced to Ray Palmer's Atom while he was dating a woman named Jean Loring. If that name sounds familiar, it may be because Loring would later go on to become known as the supervillain Eclipso, following her mental breakdown in Identity Crisis. But before any of this happened, Jean was a normal civilian, a criminal lawyer in fact. She and Ray would even be married for a short while. Then they'd break it off, then she'd want to get back with him, and then she becomes Eclipso. That's how it goes. Number 8. Black Cats. Black Cat seems to mostly have a thing for fellow supers, be they good or bad. Considering that she is known to flip-flop herself between the two, I think it depends on kind of how she's feeling at the time, and whether or not she is in love with Spider-Man or currently hates him. Kind of tells us what her superhero supervillain status will be. However, in an alternate reality, she ends up marrying Flash Thompson. The two even have kids together. And while Flash Thompson is a superhero in the main continuity, often known as Agent Venom or Agent Anti-Venom, Felicia later divorces Flash and starts dating a woman named Diana. The two met through work, and Diana herself appears to be a pretty normal and lovely lady. Number 7. Jessica Drew / Spider-Woman. Jessica Drew has had a few different partners who could be considered civilians. She dated her landlord David Ishma briefly when she lived in San Francisco. However, when David learned of Jessica's secret life as Spider-Woman, he found it kind of hard to take, and the two ended up breaking up. She also dated S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Jerry Hunt for a time, who, while being a special agent, still did not have any superpowers, so he counts. There was also her unlucky first boyfriend, who she dated shortly after emerging from the stasis that gave her her powers, but also kind of stole a childhood from her, as she was stuck unconscious for years while her body recovered. So she went to bed as a little kid and woke up as a full-grown adult. She first discovered her famous Venom Blast, which activated when she was startled, resulting in her accidentally killing her first boyfriend. So that's why he was pretty unlucky. He died. Rest in peace, unnamed first boyfriend. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Number 6. Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman, like Superman, has had a long-standing relationship with Steve Trevors. And while Steve Trevors has played the hero and is a military man, he is still non-powered. He's got a lot of useful abilities, but for the most part, he's just Wonder Woman's usually annoying love interest. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of the Superman and Wonder Woman ship because I love Superman with Lois Lane, but if it means that we can get rid of Steve Trevor, I'm kind of all for it. Also, could Wonder Woman just like not have a love interest? I'm cool with that too. Let me know what your feelings are on the relationship between the two, and if you love Steve Trevor or if you hate him, and if you love or hate Steve Trevor and Wonder Woman together in the comments below.
Halfway through number 5, Hercules. Extreme X-Men is one hell of a storyline. Chris and Salvador shook up every Wolverine fan with this story. The series was about a group of X-Men taken from different realities. One of these realities had James Howlett, a man from a reality where Britain had conquered Canada. Thanks. He had his metal skeleton and claws, but they were made of adamantine instead of adamantium. The controversy came from James's relationship with Hercules, and yes, I mean the Greek demigod Hercules. In this reality, Wolverine was bisexual, and the two shared a passionate kiss in issue number 10 after they saved Canada from the worst monster they have ever faced. While seeing diversity is great, Wolverine being with a demigod is one of the coolest and honestly most unexpected things. Can you just imagine the whole Hercules from the Disney movie actually being this Hercules? I mean, Disney owns Marvel now, so it could be canon. It technically is. I mean, especially with Disney Infinity. That must have been a really awkward reunion. And then for Mystique. Okay, I'm not gonna lie here, Mystique would be the ultimate lover. Well, yes, asking her to morph into, say, Jennifer Lawrence may be a little offensive. If she offers, then who is gonna refuse that? Well, in the case of Mystique and Wolverine, it's either they hate each other or they love each other, there is no in between. While she has been a more powerful adversary to the team, she did end up joining the X-Men after Endgame and was crucial in the downfall of Apocalypse. Mystique also has a special connection with Wolverine, first meeting him in 1921, where she manipulated him in a bank robbery. After that, over the years, she has pretended to be his friend or ally and betrayed him, even framed him for murder, and arranged for him to be sent to hell. But hey, he can't help but sleep with her once for every punch they throw at each other. But I mean, can you really blame him? And at 3, Domino. Domino has incredible skills with guns and hand-to-hand combat. However, her mutant power is where she gets her real benefit from. First appearing in X-Force number 8, Domino has the ability to change luck to boost not only her abilities, but those around her. This is ranged from jamming guns at the perfect moment, being at the exact right place at the exact right time, to even summoning a lightning bolt to hit the exact spot she needed at exactly the right time. However, with Wolverine, she doesn't need her powers to get lucky. See what I did there? Lucky. In New X-Men Annual number 2001, Wolverine and Domino were investigating an operation that was harvesting mutant organs. Despite the gross situations they had faced and the really gruesome surroundings, they managed to have a one-night stand. And they didn't stop at one. The two shared the need to keep things simple, and that helps them be a perfect match. Well, only slightly less than our number 1 spot, at least to me. And at 2, Jean Grey. With infinite Earths, there are infinite possibilities, yet somehow, in many of these alternate realities, Jean Grey and Wolverine have been a thing. One of the most famous being the 1995 Age of Apocalypse storyline that changed history to give Apocalypse control over the world. In that timeline, Jean Grey and Wolverine were in love. Wolverine was also missing a hand, but hey, to him it might have been worth it. Or it could just be okay because he had the woman he loved by his side nonetheless. But I mean, his claws still come through the stump, so he didn't really lose them, which is good. I mean, I think it is. Like, those things must hurt like hell when they come out, healing factor or no. But to have them come out at the end of your arm when you're missing a hand? Scar tissue is more delicate and sensitive than regular tissue, so that must hurt a hell of a lot more. I mean, in that story, he never really unleashes his claws, only uses the stump as a weapon since it had like a metal covering, but the claws could poke through that easily. Maybe he didn't unleash the beast because it would hurt too bad. It's just a theory. Finally, in number 1, the Earth. Look, I'm all for saving the Earth and everything. Saving the universe is cool, hell, even saving other planets and other universes is cool. But when those things are in danger, my first thought isn't, oh, I'm gonna f that. Thousands of years in the future, humanity was left on an Earth that couldn't support them anymore. Thousands of years? Shooting a little high there, Marvel. Well, to survive, Susan Richards and the Fantastic Four, also known as the Defenders, brought billions of people to the 21st century, where they settled on a new Earth. Doing this somehow left Gaia, the spirit of the Earth, weakened and enraged at the betrayal and abandonment. And in 2009's Fantastic Four number 3, she went after them. When she showed up, she had some powerful allies to back her play, and she almost destroyed the new Earth until Wolverine agreed to go back to the future with her. He gave her his healing factor by getting her pregnant, which brought her back from insanity. And I'm sure it did, not getting some for thousands of years. Probably none of it was actually spent in a bed. So I'm sure getting some after that long would bring anyone back from insanity. But the moral of the story is, Logan saved the planet by literally rocking the world. And of course, that was the solution, because the only logic that exists is comic book logic. Who cares anymore?
Number 10, Rogue. This relationship never came to full bloom, but it would have had the show X-Men Evolution continued. In this animated series, all of the X-Men are pretty much teenagers attending high school with their teen mutant rivals, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And Rogue ends up having a big crush on, surprisingly, Cyclops. Rogue, of course, is recognized as being one of the hottest mutants around, but does Cyclops care about that? Of course not. He's only got eyes for Jean. However, Frank Parr confessed that Scott's story arc would have had him ending up in Rogue's probably gloved arms, had the show progressed beyond the 4 seasons it was given. During the final episode, we see Professor X getting a vision of the future, and in it you may have noticed Cyclops and Rogue standing quite close together in the group of X-Men. This was a little nod to the series' original intentions for their characters' romantic development. Number 9. Psylocke. While nothing was ever shown as happening between these two in the comics, for a while it seemed like a relationship could have been forming. After Cyclops found himself separated from Jean while working on different teams, Psylocke, who was also a part of his team, began to aggressively flirt with him. Scott also appeared to reciprocate the attraction by flirting back, though the two would ultimately split for their own reasons. For Cyclops, the flirting was putting a strain on his relationship with Jean, understandably, and for Psylocke, she ended up realizing that she was being influenced by Quanon, which could explain the way she had been acting, though not the way she felt, as she still felt that the feelings for Scott were her own. Still, despite the fact that Psylocke is a psychic superhero, so totally Scott's type, this was one of the weirdest and confusing romantic pairings we have ever seen for either hero. And in the end, the comics just kind of went like, oh well, this was a mistake, oh, it's fine. Number 8. Dazzler. While Cyclops of Earth 616 has never shown much romantic interest in Dazzler, doesn't mean that his alternates haven't. And Scott Summers of Earth 616 has a lot of great alternates, by the way. One of them being Corporal Scott Summers of Earth 70213. He and Allison met during his time on her team comprised of mutants from different alternate universes, who were working together to put a stop to 10 different evil alternate versions of Charles Xavier. During their time together, sparks flew between the pair, though their relationship status has yet to really be set in stone. Still, if Miles and Gwen can make it work, maybe Corporal Summers and Dazzler can too. Besides, Corporal Summers was recently roaming around Earth 616, so what's to say he might not bump into Allison again and reignite the spark? I'm hoping. My fingers are crossed. They're so cute together. Number 7. Polaris. Polaris is Lorna Doone, the daughter of Magneto. She is commonly known for being involved with another of the Summers clan, Cyclops' brother Alex, aka Havoc. However, in the Ultimate Universe of 1610, while Lorna and Alex still end up being a thing, it's implied that before their relationship, she actually dated his brother, Scott, which is a little weird, because Earth 616 Scott dated Lee Forrester for a time, the captain aboard a ship he worked on, who would then go on to date Magneto in that universe, proving that time, it's really not a thing in the world of comics, because otherwise that whole thing seems a little gross and confusing. What's happening? Number 6. Carol Danvers. Granted, this happens in the alternate reality of Mutant X, but these two end up in a full-on romance together that I feel needs to be acknowledged because of how oddly successful it seemed to be. In this alternate reality, Scott appears to have followed in his dad's footsteps, becoming the leader of the ultra-cool Starjammers, instead of becoming the leader of the X-Men. Guess who else also becomes a member of the Starjammers, similar to her Earth 616 counterpart? Carol Danvers. Well, in the main continuity, these two would make for a really odd pair indeed. They seem perfect for one another here. Carol appears to be the rock that this carefree and ultimately happier Scott Summers needs. Of course, we don't get to explore the ins and outs of this relationship as much as I'd like, but on the surface it seems, well, pretty adorable. I ship it. Number 5. Quicksilver. These two never really got the full opportunity to explore their romance in the Age of Apocalypse reality, as it was fairly bleak and we are led to believe that they both died in battle. But during this story arc, we got to see some behind the scenes into their feelings for one another through their thought bubbles. Yay, thought bubbles. There are a few touches and words here and there passed between the two as well that imply there's likely so much more going on off panel. And this version of Quicksilver appears to be a pretty good fit for Aurora. He's much more serious and determined after the death of his sister Wanda, and he also has a closer relationship to his dad Magneto, because this is back in the 90s, before that whole family tree for the Maximoff twins was retconned. Bring them back! I want them to be Magneto's kids! Don't retcon that, it was so good. Marvel, why? Number 4. Beast. This relationship comes to us from the alternate Marvel Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610. The two dated for a while, but their relationship was cut short by Beast dying. A strange recurring thing in Storm's romantic life. A lot of the people she dates end up dead for some reason. I guess because that's the only way writers can think of a relationship with Storm would actually end, because she's ultimately so cool, like why would you ever break up with her? But if you're dating her, just maybe be like extra careful in battle, just in case. Beast's death inspired her punk rock look in this universe, and she ended up turning to Wolverine for comfort. However, when Beast returned from the dead, Storm was quick to drop Logan in favor of rekindling her romance with Hank, who it turned out had his death forcibly faked by Professor X and Nick Fury. It was weird, but overall kind of a sweet romance.
In at number 3, Hulkling. Young Avengers Hulkling Teddy Altman and Wiccan Billy Kaplan are one of the best teen couples in comics currently, or young adult rather. Hulkling is a Kree-Skrull hybrid and Wiccan is a mutant and a mage. The latter is the reincarnated son of Scarlet Witch and the former is the son of the original Captain Marvel, Mar-Vell. Now Teddy's heritage is a bit clearer. The source of Billy's powers though are a bit unclear despite his powers being triggered when Scarlet Witch healed him. Now it is presumed he is a mutant. Despite this, the relationship between the two is pretty darn wonderful. Teddy and Billy have managed to make it through thick and thin and have become a fan favorite ship to a larger audience than just LGBTQ readers. They're also engaged, so that's exciting, and have a really sweet apartment in downtown Manhattan. Like how dope is that? Moving on to number 2, Star-Lord. While Colossus might be endgame for Kitty Pryde, Shadowcat had a pretty intense relationship with Peter Quill aka Star-Lord not too long ago. One of the more recent memorable pairings, the two met after Kitty found herself in space when the young time-displaced version of Jean Grey had been put on trial by the Shi'ar Empire. It started as a long-distance relationship, but eventually she joined the Guardians of the Galaxy and he proposed to her. Many people adored them for how real and relatable the romance felt, but unfortunately it did not last, with Kitty calling off the engagement and the relationship itself after the events of Civil War II. And last but not least, in our number 1 spot, Squirrel Girl. In New Avengers Volume 2 Issue 7, Squirrel Girl Doreen Green becomes the nanny for Jessica Jones and Luke Cage's daughter, but in doing so, she comes face to face with another member of the team, a past lover of hers, Wolverine. That's where we learn that the two had a previous romantic rendezvous. They awkwardly compliment each other on how good they both look, and then there's a bit of a sparring match between them where Wolverine gets his butt handed to him. No claws involved in the sparring, might I add though. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for those of you less curious, that is all we learned about their romantic past together. I mean, can you blame us for being curious?
Number 10. Rogue. One of Rogue's first loves was Cody Robbins, who was just a normal young boy. This was of course before Rogue's powers manifested, but like many mutants before and after her powers then decided to manifest at the worst possible time. As if first kisses weren't awkward enough, her powers activated just as she and Cody leaned in for their first kiss. As a result of her powers manifesting during the kiss, she drained Cody of his life energy, leaving him in a coma. This experience would haunt Rogue for years, causing her to be afraid of her powers and thereby making her unable to fully control them, until she came to realize her fear and trauma were exactly what was holding her back. Number 9. Carol Danvers / Captain Marvel. Although at the time, Carol wasn't Captain Marvel yet, she was Miss Marvel. While her original Miss Marvel series had some really great stuff in it, her dating life was pretty weird in there. Though, to be honest, I've always found a lot of Carol's dating choices to be pretty weird. Except for Rhodey. That is a love that will last forever in my mind. When it came to dating your average Joe though, Carol was kinda all over the place. Her main squeeze seemed to be her therapist, Mike Barnett, if you could call him her main squeeze. Which, yeah, is really wrong by the way for a lot of reasons. Mainly because Carol continued to see Mike as her therapist while she was dating him. Eek. Mike violently met his end when he was randomly murdered by Mystique in his own office. And then Carol had to watch it later on this sort of illusion thing, and it was not good. I also like how in that scene Iron Man is like, this is an illusion thing. Oh, the 90s. This is just apparently part of the 90s. We were like, illusions, it's normal. Number 8. Starfire. Although in the end he wasn't truly a civilian in regards to him being just an innocent guy with no ulterior motives, Starfire believed that Franklin was pretty much innocent the entire time they were together. Franklin Crandall was someone Starfire had met through her job as a model, which her pal Donna Troy, aka Wonder Girl, had helped her to land. Starfire actually fell hard for Franklin, creating tension between her and her ex at the time, Dick Grayson's Nightwing, in regards to their working relationship on the Teen Titans. In the end, Franklin was revealed to have been a spy for Hive, but he had also fallen for Corey as well. He refused to betray her, and as a result, Hive eliminated him. Tragically, he died in Starfire's arms. Don't know if you're noticing a pattern yet here. Number 7. Kyle Rayner / Green Lantern. Since becoming a hero and having a really bad experience when it comes to his relationships with civilians, Green Lantern Kyle Rayner has aimed to stick to dating those with powers, usually. So he's really only had one major relationship with a civilian, but it ended so tragically that it's likely informed the rest of his choices when it comes to dating. Alexandra DeWitt was actually Kyle's ex, whom he was living with when he was given his power ring, and with it the powers and responsibilities of being a Green Lantern. Alex helped him during his transitional period in learning how to be a hero. She even made him a costume too. And the change actually brought the two of them back together again, allowing them to rekindle their romance. Yay! Unfortunately, while he was away on a mission, Alex's closeness to Kyle caused his enemies to target her, killing her and brutally stuffing her in their fridge, along with a note that seemed to be signed from Alex that read, "Surprise for you in the fridge." Rough. Although Alex passed away, she has never been far from Kyle's thoughts, and he has frequently created constructs of her. Number 6. Hal Jordan / Green Lantern. Outside of the fact that Carol Ferris was originally a civilian when the two first found themselves kind of falling for one another, Hal has also dated women who stayed civilians as well. Carol herself was originally Hal's boss, which is why they could never be together. In fact, Carol was not just in love with Hal, but she was also in love with his other persona as well, the Green Lantern, who she originally did not know was actually Hal himself. Later she would become the Violet Lantern known as Starfire, and the two would have an on-again, off-again romance throughout the years. But in and around that love story, Hal would also get involved with Normal Girl and Ginger, Eve Doremus, and fellow Air Force pilot Jillian Perlman, known by her call sign Cowgirl. Number 5. Batman and Black Canary. A lot of people think of Black Canary as only really having eyes for Green Arrow. Often in the comics, these two superheroes have been painted as soulmates for one another. But hey, that wasn't always the case. There was a time in the comics when Black Canary actually had second thoughts as to whether or not her and Ollie were really meant to be. When she was having doubts, Batman was there for her, and the two at one point in main continuity shared a passionate kiss. Well, back when Earth 1 was considered the main continuity anyways, before it was retconned to be considered an alternate Earth. In regards to the old once main continuity of Earth 1 though, that's about as far as it ever got between these two heroes. However, in Frank Miller's All-Star Batman and Robin, the two are actually lovers, at least for a time, with Batman also kind of being the more reluctant participant when it comes to the somewhat unlikely couple. But Black Canary is super into it, and Batman's like, I'm here. I would do this. Number 4. Luke Cage and She-Hulk. Luke Cage is a guy who you usually think of as being with Jessica Jones. Why? Well, because the two are married and they also have a daughter together. Also, they're super cute together. The two of them are an amazing power couple. But before they tied the knot and ended up committing to one another, did you know that Luke Cage actually went on a date with She-Hulk? Yep. After winning a bet, he got Jennifer Walters to commit to going out to dinner with him. Honestly, these two together are also a great pair when you think about it. Both are strong, both are witty, and both are committed to doing whatever it takes to save civilians in peril. Unfortunately, their relationship really only consisted of that one date as far as I know, which is also why you might have missed this brief pairing. If you want to check out this date though, which coincidentally gets interrupted by some baddies but then even continues after that, check out Heroes for Hire issue 17. And I believe that's Heroes for Hire volume number 1 from the 90s. Number 3. Supergirl and Jimmy Olsen. This happened in Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen. What a wonderful, weird series. What happened? Well, Supergirl, who has at times been shipped with Soup's pal, ties the knot with Jimmy Olsen himself. Jimmy gets all the ladies in the comics, but really he kinda does. Must be that ginger charm. Jimmy Olsen ends up with Supergirl in this case because she gets amnesia. Jimmy, not knowing that Linda Danvers is Supergirl's secret identity, accidentally exposes her to red kryptonite when she attends a show where he's basically showing off all his trophies and his souvenirs from his exploits with Superman. The two are wed, and it's only after their wedding, when they are married, that the effects of the red kryptonite wear off, with Linda getting her memories and her superpowers back. Now, Supergirl has a dilemma because, she wants Jimmy to also love that other side of her. Because yeah, she gets her memories back and she's like, yeah, I'm married to Jimmy Olsen, I love it. So she wants Jimmy to fall in love with her true Kryptonian side. So what is a girl to do? Well, obviously try to get him to cheat on his wife, who is of course still her, with her superhero persona of Supergirl, right? Isn't that what we do? It was a different time, folks. Jimmy ends up being conflicted when he believes both women are interested in him, with Supergirl actually propositioning him for marriage even though he's already married to Linda. In the end though, everything is resolved and Jimmy realizes he's married to Supergirl and Linda, who are one and the same. However, this issue also ends with the fact that this is all an imaginary tale. Haha, joke's on you, reader. So the wedding that thousands of readers, as described in the intro, had apparently been waiting for was actually all a sham. Aw, DC, you got us. But hey, in an alternate reality where this happened, the two are possibly still married, so fun facts. Number 2, Human Torch and Mr. Fantastic. That is right, speaking of alternate realities, there is an alternate reality over at Marvel where the Human Torch is the older Storm sibling who ends up married to Reed Richards. This alternate team of the FF appear in issue 563 of the Fantastic Four series, legacy numbering of course. Here we meet Jack Storm, who is Reed Richards' partner in crime fighting and his partner in romance. Jack is the older sibling and Sue is the younger, though she is still a member of the team as the Invisible Woman. Unfortunately, their alternate world was in pretty bleak shape when we saw them in that issue. The whole team died, but we can assume there was a time in this reality where Jack and his husband Reed were actually quite happy together, before everything pretty much ended. This couple existed in the reality of Earth 93563. Number 1, Harley Quinn and Harley Quinn. Now, I think at this point we can almost certainly count Harley as a superhero. I mean, at least an anti-hero, at the very least. While she may have won Villain of the Year only a few years ago in 2019, she still has played an active role when it comes to the hero side of things in the comics, even teaming up with Batman in Joker War and joining the Bat family in a more recurring role as Bat's sidekick this year in 2021 in the Batman series. So for that reason, I'm gonna count her for this list. Also, I love Harley for the reason that she is constantly changing and evolving so much. It's hard to pin her down as either hero or villain permanently. It's great. I like when people are like, what are they? They're kind of complicated. That's what they are. In her own series, Harley's Little Black Book, here Harley teams up with herself, her bombshell self that is. Harley's Little Black Book, in case you didn't know, is actually a team-up book for Harley Quinn. Also, if you haven't read it, go check it out. It's pretty wild and pretty fun. Because Harley ends up teaming with herself in issue number 4 of this series, she can't resist and of course gives herself a big kiss. While main continuity Harley is all about it and even proclaims, hey, she's a pretty good kisser, bombshell Harley does not seem to feel any sparks between them, thinking that the main continuity Harley is actually a trick created by her enemies. Gotta love the self-love.
And at number 10, Normie Osborn. Let's begin with a rather PG pairing here on our list, Mayday Parker and Normie Osborn, from the alternate universe of the MC2. Mayday Parker is the daughter of the original Spider-Man, aka Peter Parker, and Mary Jane Watson. She first appeared in What If Volume 2, issue 105 in 1998. Normie, on the other hand, is the grandson of Norman Osborn, as you probably guessed. He was also the MC2 Green Goblin, but ended up giving up that mantle. Mayday previously had a crush on him, and he still has feelings for her, despite being married to Brenda Drago, aka Raptor these days. But back then they shared some intimate moments, including a passionate kiss, in which Normie rejected her afterwards because of their family's histories together. He straight up said, "Your father would kill me." Speaking of her father, this one isn't actually her father, but it's the same dude in at number 9, Peter Parker. Moving on to another alternate universe, and at this number we have the Mangaverse. We are talking about Earth 2301, where Mary Jane Watson is Spider-Woman and she rolls with a gang of ninjas called the Spider Clan. Now Peter Parker on this Earth is still Spider-Man and he shows her the ropes with the clan. But he is also her boyfriend. Now, while we aren't given too much detail about their relationship beyond the fact that they are a thing, we do see them participate with other heroes in an event that turns out to be a superhero massacre. But luckily they survive, so yay for love. Moving on to number 8, Peter Parker again. Okay, different Peter Parker this time around. We're actually looking at the 616 Peter Parker. And the Spider-Woman in this case? Well, it is not the 616 Spider-Woman, but it is a woman with the same spider powers. We're talking Silk, aka Cindy Moon. Silk was first introduced in Amazing Spider-Man issue 1 in 2014, fully appearing in issue 4 later on in that series. Now she was bitten by the same radioactive spider as Peter Parker was, except her journey took a very different turn. She was kept in hiding for her own safety to prevent her from being killed by Morlun. Anyway, when her and Peter finally met, they noticed that they had an uncontrollable attraction to one another. This is because of their pheromones. And they couldn't work together without wanting to jump each other's bones. It got so bad that they had to part ways and work separately. but they did get in quite a few little kinky you-know-whats along the way. And at number 7, Moonrake. Julia Carpenter was the second Spider-Woman. Then she became the second Arachne, and then the second Madame Web. Regardless, she first appeared in Secret Wars Volume 1 Issue 7 in 1984 and since has been a member of many prominent superhero teams, including the West Coast Avengers, ForceWorks, and Omega Flight. Now, after the West Coast Avengers disbanded, she would find herself as part of ForceWorks, where her and Moonraker would be teammates. Moonraker was a mysterious fellow, capable of altering time. When he first appeared as part of the ForceWorks team, it was like the plot to Buffy Season 5. Kudos to any of you who get that reference, we're talking Dawn here. He just magically appeared there and no one acted like he had never not been a member of the team. It was super weird. You know, it was because he had altered time and reality to make it appear as if he had been a member for like 6 months. He would get involved romantically with Spider-Woman, with her daughter Rachel being unaffected by his time slip, calling him out for not knowing who the hell he was. Later he would claim to be Libra, aka Gustav Brandt, and kind of slipped into obscurity altogether. Probably for the best. Moving on to number 6, Carol Danvers. Okay, hear me out friends. Yes, Carol Danvers and Spider-Woman Jessica Drew have never actually hooked up romantically, they are best friends. But because of this, they have a whole lot of shippers, arguably more shippers than any other ship that Jessica Drew has out there in her fandoms, and a lot of fan art. So since she doesn't have that many people she's hooked up with canonically in the 616, we are tossing Carol into the mix for this list. Jessica is one of the only superheroes that Carol fully trusts and is close to. They've always had each other's backs, whether in conflict or emotionally. Carol was there for Jessica during her pregnancy and helped support her emotionally as a single mom. They have a loving friendship, it's pretty great. Plus, as many of their shippers will point out, these two have had a whole lot of sexual tension over the years. Of course, now that is subjective and depends entirely on how you read the text, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't agree with them. Moving on.
Number 5. Frenzy. Joanna Cargo was originally an enemy of the X-Men, often associated with such supervillain teams as Alliance of Evil and the Acolytes. However, during the events of Age of X, which Legion caused by using his powers to warp reality, the two were brought together and fought alongside one another. They were even married, and Frenzy was one of the few that Scott could remove his visor in front of due to her invulnerability powers making her immune to his optic blasts. After reality was unwarped, she ended up deciding to keep her memories and renouncing her past ways, becoming a hero and an X-Men. She also tried to rekindle her relationship with Scott, but he really had no interest, though he was willing to let her join the X-Men team, which is unfortunate because honestly, they were pretty cute together. I want it to be a thing. Scott, couldn't you have just been cool, be like kinda Age of X you and kind of just normal you? You could be both. Number 4. Colleen Wing. When Cyclops thought that Jean was dead during a time when she was MIA, he ended up spending a lot of quality time with Colleen Wing. There was definitely an attraction between the two of them, but both of them held back somewhat initially. Scott was still hung up on Jean, even though he kinda thought she might be dead, and Colleen thought that the two were still dating, knowing that Jean and Scott were an item through her partner Misty Knight, who had been Jean's roommate. Over time, however, the attraction seemed to develop into a relationship, with Colleen even giving Scott a key to her apartment. But when Jean resurfaced, Scott rushed to her side and explained away he and Colleen's relationship as just that of close friends. A close friend whose apartment he had a key to. I'm sure he didn't mention that part. We never really saw Scott explain Jean's return to Colleen, however, not sure if that means that he just ghosted her or if it just happened between issues, but either way, sad. Number 3. Professor X. Okay, based on my description earlier of Wolverine, I kinda think you know where I'm going with this. You know where I'm going with this? The secret romance between Professor X and Mystique, which many originally thought had to be some kind of trick of Mystique's. We see her giving birth to Charles Xavier II, her and Charles' son, after Professor X's death, but under the guise of Moira McTaggart. Many thought that her disguise could be used as proof that she was up to no good, but we later found out that this was not the case during the reading of Xavier's will, wherein it was explained that he had married Mystique and had actually left his school to her. So yeah, what happened there? We need like a series just to explain that whole romance. It's not enough information. Number 2. Rogue. It's true that Rogue spends most of her time pining after Gambit, who in turn is pining after her, but she's also had a really creepy relationship with the Shadow King. Seriously. At one point he even manages to tempt her into kissing him, though I use the term tempt here really lightly, as Rogue seems to be weirdly into it. He has also offered to have her become his Shadow Queen. What is going on there? But the Shadow King isn't the only villain that Rogue has seemed to have weird feelings for. No. During their time together on Savage Land, Rogue also seemed to express feelings for Magneto. Yeah, Magneto. Though the two had to part ways as Magneto felt they were just simply too different. Not that he was simply too old, which also there might be something to that. Magneto's probably a lot older than her. Number 1. Batman. The ultimate lover of all ladies villainous. Batman is definitely known for his love of the darkness, and apparently this love has extended to the bedroom. He has been mind controlled by Poison Ivy, has had Harley pine after him, fell for Nocturna, and almost married Catwoman and Jezebel Jet. And depending on what you're reading or watching, he maybe did marry Talia, and he also definitely has a son with her, making Batman definitely the one who is spending the most time in bed with those who could be deemed criminals or evil. And the really weird thing here is that he is a master detective, so he generally knows what everyone is up to. So I guess he just enjoys sleeping with criminals. I mean, sure, fair enough. Number 10. Batman and Emma Frost. I love the idea of crossover ships. There is nowhere else we'll likely see these ones anytime soon other than in our imaginations. Unless Amalgam somehow comes back to life. Why do I feel like Emma Frost and Batman would be so perfect together as a ship? Because they are both very focused and determined people. Also, they are both people who understand the responsibility that comes with power. And Emma also happens to be quite good at wielding said power and also quite good at business, like Batman. Ship is a term I'm going to use a lot here, by the way, and just to explain it briefly in case anyone doesn't know what it means, ship refers to a relationship, not a boat. And to ship a couple, or when I talk about ships that exist, I'm referring to the idea of that couple together. In this case, the ship would be Batman and Emma Frost, and if I supported them together, I would say I ship them, or I ship it. Number 9. Hellcat and She-Hulk. Okay, so I might be the lone shipper on this one. You all can let me know in the comments if I am. I've looked into it and I don't see a lot of stuff about it, but I love the idea of Hellcat and She-Hulk together in a relationship. In the comics, Trish Walker and Jen Walters are best friends, despite what the Netflix Jessica Jones series would have you believe. Hellcat and She-Hulk are always there for one another and always have a ton of fun together. I think they have great chemistry, and I've always wondered what it would be like if they ended up falling in love with one another. Maybe no one else sees it, maybe no one else wants it, but I do, and it's my list, so I guess y'all will just have to deal with it. Let me know if you see the potential that I see when these two are together in the comments. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more shipping lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Batman and Harley Quinn. For some reason, this is a ship that a lot of people seem to want. I know at least James Tynion IV seemed to lean into it when he was writing Batman. During Joker War, I felt like there were a lot of possibly flirty and romantic moments that went on between these two. Honestly though, it kinda makes sense. Harley, while not known for her love of the Bat, certainly is depicted as having a thing for Bruce Wayne, which is the true identity of Batman. Or is it the other way around? Either way, I feel like Harley and Batman are kind of a weird ship, unless we're talking White Knight universe of course, where the two definitely have some well-earned chemistry. Still, these two together would probably have a healthier relationship than Joker and Harley, so point for that, I suppose. Let me know if you ship Harlbats down below, and if you think Harlbats is a good ship name or not. I just made it up. Number 7. Deadpool and Green Lantern. Of course, what pairing could be better than Deadpool and Green Lantern? In the cinematic realm, that would mean that we get to see Ryan Reynolds date himself, and I personally am for that. I don't know if I want this ship in the form of some alternate reality one-shot or if I want it in the form of a short film, but I definitely want it. So Ryan Reynolds, if you're watching this, can you make that happen for us? Thank you. Also, a big thank you to Liam for the suggestion. Y'all probably don't know Liam, but he is one of the folks who currently does work at the studio off camera and is also a fellow nerd amongst our cast, crew, and production team. So thanks, Liam. This is a fun one. Number 6. Captain America and Captain Marvel. Okay, so this just might be me, This apparently is a list of characters that I want to hook up, but one ship that I have always been super hopeful for is Cap and Cap. I feel like Carol's fun, yet serious and disciplined nature would go well with Captain America's classic ideals and optimistic, stern, yet fair approach. Also, the two of them have pretty much always respected one another and fight and work well together. They also both have a military background. So obviously it already feels like there is a good basis of chemistry there when it comes to a potential relationship happening between the two of them. I might be alone in this one, but it's still one that I personally want to see. And hey, the world is a big place. Maybe I'm not the only one dreaming of the Cap-Cap romance. Let me know in the comments if you are also curious about what these two would be like together as a couple.
Number 5, Jean Grey. Jean Grey and Nightcrawler share a kiss in the X-Men Alternate Universe story X-Men The End. This was a miniseries that ran from 2004 to 2006 and was written by the legendary Chris Claremont. It's a lot of a lot. You gotta strap in for all the plot details. We've got the Shi'ar Empire, the Phoenix Force, Phoenix Eggs hatching Jean Grey, who becomes a carrier for the Force again anyway. At one point, Nightcrawler grabs her and kisses her, and tells her she is the fire and the life. And their hopes and dreams made flesh, so no pressure. I think my favorite thing about this speech is that it's going on while he's kissing her, so it's like he couldn't even stop kissing her. He had to keep talking, like, why? Number 4, Cerise. Cerise first appeared in the Excalibur comics, making her first full appearance in issue 47. She's from the planet Shaxo-Frungon. That's in the Shi'ar Empire, and I don't live there, so I don't feel too bad about that butchery. She would be drawn to the Excalibur team as soon as she encountered them, and also to her teammate Nightcrawler. This one was a full-blown relationship. She was learning to navigate relationships with him and found it highly enjoyable. So you kind of have a Starfire kind of thing going on. And also because of that, she was super free with her feelings and thoughts, be it about missing him or just about making out, which he very much appreciated. Shout out to the tall Amazonian ladies and the shorter men who love them. Not a lot of people know about Cerise outside of Excalibur, but I mean, if you're ever back there, she's a fun character. Number 3, Rachel Summers. This is a more recent development at the time of this recording. Rachel Summers was actually born in an alternate universe. She is the sister of Nate Grey. She would become more and more connected to canon continuity via retcon. As Rachel Grey, during her time on the X-Men, she developed quite a crush on Nightcrawler. In fact, the two actually shared a kiss. However, at that point, he was also crushing on Storm, who was crushing on Wolverine, high school drama. Still, now that Rachel's prestige, the two seem to have an attraction going on still, prompting such classy headlines as, "Is Rachel Summers going to get some tail?" See, it's a play on words because that's slang for sex, but he also has a tail. Ba-doom-tsh. I like their swashbuckler outfits though. This was X-Men Gold issue 7, just in case you're interested. Number 2, Megan. She first appeared in Mighty World of Marvel number 7 back in 1983 and was part of Marvel UK. Her first American appearance was New Mutants Annual Volume 1 number 2 back in 1986. She was tied to Captain Britain, and she was a major romantic interest for him. But during their time on Excalibur, she developed some very strong feelings for Nightcrawler, who had very strong feelings for her. Except, well, she was in a relationship with Captain Britain at the time. So it was very much a this shouldn't be kind of thing, and Captain Britain was very jealous about it. It kind of sort of happened, not really, because cheating, and ultimately she actually married Captain Britain in that comic. In modern continuity though, there is still flirting and some feel cheating. Is there kisses? Maybe. Anyway, Megan is one of Nightcrawler's well-known and acknowledged loves. And number 1, Amanda Sefton. Number 1 has to go to the earliest classic romantic interest for Nightcrawler. Amanda Sefton, aka Day Tripper, aka the Second Magic. Also, she's his foster sister, just roll with it. These two have an on-again, off-again relationship, and it's been going on for decades. Even when not together though, they remain people the other can call on. One of the first things the Nightcrawler did when he was resurrected was seek her out to try and restart their relationship. Cause death is just an inconvenience for most superheroes. For many, this couple is an endgame couple, like the must-be couple. And if you're not too familiar with Nightcrawler or the X-Men, you may be like, what is all this? I need to check it all out, or not.